Naka-in na ako, sabi ko.
CBRC, the biggest and most leading brand in test preparation with its continuous domination and expansion. Dr. Carl E. Balita Review Center has consistency in strategic growth, innovation, and global expansion. CBRC, in its 10 years of existence, has established its dominant position in almost 100 branches in the Philippines and has continued its expansion in the Middle East, ASEAN, and in Hong Kong. CBRC in Hong Kong was initiated to conduct review programs for the Filipino education graduates who are working as domestic helpers. 75% of all the passers in the licensure examination for teachers were products of CBRC. Middle East expansion has taken place with CBRC being physically present in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates for the past years, covering special board professional licensure examination, producing passers and top-notchers among the teachers. CBRC is also virtually present in the entire Middle East through its e-University online, where anyone can learn anything, anytime. Expansion in the ASEAN will not be missed by CBRC. It has signed contracts with one of the ASEAN's biggest markets, Indonesia. CBRC had its first and second batches of trainees at Bunda Medic Hospital for the International Nurses Examination and Language Training Program for nurses and healthcare professionals. It has also signed a Memorandum of Understanding with Fajar Hidayah, a network of schools in Jakarta and Malaysia, for the CBRC language and review centers all over Indonesia and Malaysia. CBRC is the brand leader in Philippine test preparation. Anchored on quality results and effective strategies, CBRC has become tantamount to the review center in the Philippines, being the dominant and most respected brand leader for professional review and training. CBRC has a record of 215 board top-notchers and has the unprecedented record of 42 top-notch passers in both BLEPT and SPLE of teachers in September 2017 and 35 top-notchers in all places from 1 to 10, with 2 at the top spot in 2016 licensure examination for teachers. Apart from this, CBRC has produced hundreds and thousands of professionals who qualified in the CBRC Circle of Line of Eights with board rating of above 80%, which impact is its highly competitive professionals among its products. CBRC is the most publicized review center with the extraordinary stories of its products. From a blind teacher, the country's first hearing-impaired licensed professional teacher, and the first differently abled top-notcher who is a Marfan survivor, CBRC never fails to communicate the stories of struggles and hopes. From the gaming addict who landed at the top, to the poor girl in Romblon who became the viral top-notcher, CBRC has continued to inspire many people through the successful and inspiring stories of its products. CBRC is a relevant business in changing lives of thousands. From the hundreds of board top-notchers to tens and thousands of board passers, from the franchise partners to its employees and faculty, CBRC has changed lives and opened infinite lifelong opportunities to people. CBRC holds ultimate review coaching activities as a culmination of the CBRC experience of its numerous students every review season, which features the top lecturers to synthesize learning and holistically prepare the examinees few days before their respective board examinations. CBRC has committed to social relevance and visionary leadership. Hundreds of scholarships are granted to deserving aspirants, including Indigenous Peoples Group, persons with disabilities, honor graduates, and student leaders. Likewise, 50 preschool children from less fortunate families are adopted as full scholars for the program dubbed as Preschool for Prosperity in Pedagogy Learning Center, an entrepreneurial preschool, a pioneering concept of Dr. Carl Balita. CBRC ventured on emerging trends in the review and training industry, such as other programs with emphasis on English language proficiency. CBRC is the leading center for ESL trainings, International English Language Testing System, and English Proficiency Test, which is a mandatory requirement for Filipino teachers in the Philippines. Recently, CBRC was awarded the Most Outstanding Filipino Franchise and the Best in Marketing Campaign by the Philippine Franchise Association. No review center has ever come close to the national dominance and international presence of the Carl E. Balita Review Center. CBRC, the biggest and most leading brand in test preparation with its continuous domination and expansion. Dr. Carl E. Balita Review Center has consistency in strategic growth, innovation, and global expansion. CBRC, in its 10 years of existence, has established its dominant position in almost 100 branches in the Philippines and has continued its expansion in the Middle East, ASEAN, and in Hong Kong. CBRC in Hong Kong was initiated to conduct review programs for the Filipino education graduates who are working as domestic helpers. 75% of all the passers in the licensure examination for teachers were products of CBRC. Middle East expansion has taken place with CBRC being physically present in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates for the past years, covering special board professional licensure examination, producing passers and top-notchers among the teachers. CBRC is also virtually present in the entire Middle East through its e-University online, where anyone can learn anything, anytime. Expansion in the ASEAN will not be missed by CBRC. It has signed contracts with one of the ASEAN's biggest markets, Indonesia. CBRC had its first and second batches of trainees at Bunda Medic Hospital for the International Nurses Examination and Language Training Program for nurses and healthcare professionals. It has also signed a Memorandum of Understanding with Fajar Hidayah,
So, yan.
Ano? Ano naman po?
Mute ko muna siya.
Try niyo po ma'am para marinig niyo naman kung okay.
Bakit hindi nag-ano?
Madam, na din ako ka-comfort.
So,
Mute po ma'am.
ang hirap naman ito. I do not like that.
a network of schools in Jakarta and Malaysia for the CBRC language and review centers all over Indonesia and Malaysia. CBRC is the brand leader in Philippine test preparation. Anchored on quality results and effective strategies, CBRC has become tantamount to the review center in the Philippines, being the dominant and most respected brand leader for professional review and training. CBRC has a record of 215 board top-notchers and has the unprecedented record of 42 top-notch passers in both BLEPT and SPLE of teachers in September 2017 and 35 top-notchers in all places from 1 to 10, with 2 at the top spot in 2016 licensure examination for teachers. Apart from this, CBRC has produced hundreds and thousands of professionals who qualified in the CBRC Circle of Line of Eights with board rating of above 80%, which impact is its highly competitive professionals among its products. CBRC is the most publicized review center with the extraordinary stories of its products. From a blind teacher to the country's first hearing-impaired licensed professional teacher and the first differently abled top-notcher who is a Marfan survivor, CBRC never fails to communicate the stories of struggles and hopes. From the gaming addict who landed at the top, to the poor girl in Romblon who became the viral top-notcher, CBRC has continued to inspire many people through the successful and inspiring stories of its products. CBRC is a relevant business in changing lives of thousands. From the hundreds of board top-notchers to tens and thousands of board passers, from the franchise partners to its employees and faculty, CBRC has changed lives and opened infinite lifelong opportunities to people. CBRC holds ultimate review coaching activities as a culmination of the CBRC experience of its numerous students every review season, which features the top lecturers to synthesize learning and holistically prepare the examinees few days before their respective board examinations. CBRC has committed to social relevance and visionary leadership. Hundreds of scholarships are granted to deserving aspirants, including Indigenous Peoples Group, persons with disabilities, honor graduates, and student leaders. Likewise, 50 preschool children from less fortunate families are adopted as full scholars for the program dubbed as Preschool for Prosperity in Pedagogy Learning Center, an entrepreneurial preschool, a pioneering concept of Dr. Carl Balita. CBRC ventured on emerging trends in the review and training industry, such as other programs with emphasis on English language proficiency. CBRC is the leading center for ESL trainings, International English Language Testing System, and English Proficiency Test, which is a mandatory requirement for Filipino teachers in the Philippines. Recently, CBRC was awarded the Most Outstanding Filipino Franchise and the Best in Marketing Campaign by the Philippine Franchise Association. No review center has ever come close to the national dominance and international presence of the Carl E. Balita Review Center.
Dr. V.
Double L, sir.
Dapat ano mo photography at magbasahin sa yan.
Hindi ko lang po siya dito sa pag mag-uwi.
Oo nga, kaya lang nag-ano siya, hindi siya na
Yak mo na.
Thank you for this morning. Thank you for this weather that we have today. Guide us in all our activities in this webinar. Are going to have the research, teacher education standards. All the participants, even the officers of this trend, manage this activity. Glory to the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
CBRC, the biggest and most leading brand in test preparation with its continuous domination and expansion. Dr. Carl E. Balita Review Center has consistency in strategic growth, innovation, and global expansion. CBRC, in its 10 years of existence, has established its dominant position in almost 100 branches in the Philippines and has continued its expansion in the Middle East, ASEAN, and in Hong Kong. CBRC in Hong Kong was initiated to conduct review programs for the Filipino education graduates who are working as domestic helpers. 75% of all the passers in the licensure examination for teachers were products of CBRC. Middle East expansion has taken place with CBRC being physically present in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates for the past years, covering special board professional licensure examination, producing passers and top-notchers among the teachers. CBRC is also virtually present in the entire Middle East through its e-University online, where anyone can learn anything, anytime. Expansion in the ASEAN will not be missed by CBRC. It has signed contracts with one of the ASEAN's biggest markets, Indonesia. CBRC had its first and second batches of trainees at Bunda Medic Hospital for the International Nurses Examination and Language Training Program for nurses and healthcare professionals. It has also signed a Memorandum of Understanding with Fajar Hidayah, a network of schools in Jakarta and Malaysia, for the CBRC language and review centers all over Indonesia and Malaysia. CBRC is the brand leader in Philippine test preparation. Anchored on quality results and effective strategies, CBRC has become tantamount to the review center in the Philippines, being the dominant and most respected brand leader for professional review and training. CBRC has a record of 215 board top-notchers and has the unprecedented record of 42 top-notch passers in both BLEPT and SPLE of teachers in September 2017, and 35 top-notchers in all places from 1 to 10, with 2 at the top spot in 2016 licensure examination for teachers. Apart from this, CBRC has produced hundreds and thousands of professionals who qualified in the CBRC Circle of Line of Eights with board rating of above 80%, which impact is its highly competitive professionals among its products. CBRC is the most publicized review center with the extraordinary stories of its products. From a blind teacher to the country's first hearing-impaired licensed professional teacher and the first differently able top-notcher who is a Marfan survivor, CBRC never fails to communicate the stories of struggles and hopes. From the gaming addict who landed at the top to the poor girl in Romblon who became the viral top-notcher, CBRC has continued to inspire many people through the successful and inspiring stories of its products. CBRC is a relevant business in changing lives of thousands. From the hundreds of board top-notchers to tens and thousands of board passers, from the franchise partners to its employees and faculty, CBRC has changed lives and opened infinite lifelong opportunities to people. CBRC holds ultimate review coaching activities as a culmination of the CBRC experience of its numerous students every review season, which features the top lecturers to synthesize learning and holistically prepare the examinees few days before their respective board examinations. CBRC has committed to social relevance and visionary leadership. Hundreds of scholarships are granted to the preschool children from less fortunate families are adopted as full scholars for the program dubbed as Preschool for Prosperity in Pedagogy Learning Center, an entrepreneurial preschool, a pioneering concept of Dr. Carl Balita. CBRC ventured on emerging trends in the review and training industry, such as other programs with emphasis on English language proficiency. CBRC is the leading center for ESL trainings, International English Language Testing System, and English Proficiency Test, which is a mandatory requirement for Filipino teachers in the Philippines. Recently, CBRC was awarded the Most Outstanding Filipino Franchise and the Best in Marketing Campaign by the Philippine Franchise Association. No review center has ever come close to the national dominance and international presence of the Carl E. Balita Review Center.
Good morning, teacher education people. Welcome to the 14th Regional Pre-Service Teacher Education Congress. This year's Congress evolves on the theme Excellence and Relevance in Teacher Education under the New Normal. The Council of Deans for Teacher Education Region 5 has made this convergence of all higher education institutions all over the Bicol region possible, in spite of the many challenges it had to go through amidst the difficult times we are facing because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so here we are gathered today, though virtually, to tackle very important issues on teacher education. We will be giving you the best speakers who are most qualified to walk us through the most practicable and sensible steps to achieving excellence and relevance as we cross the threshold to the new normal. To start the program, we have the invocation to be followed by the Philippine National Anthem with Nicole K. Miranda, Bachelor of Special Needs Education student of Lantin Casaul Educational Foundation Incorporated, as the sign language interpreter.
When I am down and oh my soul so weary, when troubles come and my heart burdened be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be.
Dear God, as you say, for where two or three are gathered in your name, there you are among our midst. May this morning's gathering be a celebration of unity of mind, brotherly love, a tender heart, gratitude, and humility. Bless us all that we may be able to encourage one another, build one another up, and stir up one another to love and good works, just as you are doing. This we ask through your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. Raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up
To more than I
kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, ewan sa silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Upang hinirang, tuyag ka ng magiting, sa mandulupin, di ka pasisingil, sa nagagang tutok sa simoy at sa langit ng bagaw, ay ginagang tulang awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang isang ng patawad mo'y tagumpay na nag-iingin, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magtitingin. Luman ang araw ng walhagin pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang hindi kaya na pagkay mga amin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
May I now give you Dr. Levelia F. Sigera, Dean, Sigera Technological Colleges, Iriga City, and Board Member, CODTE V, to present our participants via an audio-visual presentation. $1,490. That's how big we are in this year's virtual Congress. Thank you for your overwhelming response to our call. We greatly appreciate your support and your virtual presence today. May I now give you the CODTE V President, Dr. Nelly A. Ditera, Dean, Southern Luzon Technological College Foundation, Incorporated, Legazpi, to give the opening remarks and the statement of purpose.
Good morning, everyone. The Council of Deans for Teacher Education 5, known as CODTE V, a long-time organization under the leadership of TED Region 5, is the peak body representing all the deans of SUCs, states, universities, and colleges, community colleges, and all private and government colleges and universities that offer teacher education degrees. CODTE works to ensure that teacher education institutions produce teacher graduates of the highest quality as a strong teaching profession and an inclusive and innovative education profession that enhances learning and teaching. It leads the delivery and development of education programs, partnership, and research. It acts as an advocate for pre-service and in-service teacher education. CODTE V officers fulfill its role by providing a forum in which deans of education and others concerned with education meet to share information about education, facilitating collaboration in education, including special interest groups within education, encouraging and supporting research in education, establishing mechanisms for monitoring the quality and status of education, discussing, debating issues of policy and administration, providing an informed public voice on matters associated with education, demonstrating commitment to the support and inspiration of teacher education students, their continued quest for knowledge and skills, creating outstanding, innovative academic programs, and affiliating with other organizations with interest in education. We are ambitious in our goals, vision, and aspirations. We challenge expectations and push the boundaries of what is possible, creating outstanding, innovative academic programs. Our work is always relevant and purpose-driven. We believe that innovation powers our steps and are motivated to make a difference through positive social impact. We work in partnership with individuals and businesses to devise creative solutions not limited by imagination. We work our pace and are always future-facing with our teaching, learning, and research focus on addressing the challenge of tomorrow and today. We do not stand still because there are many reasons why people chose teaching as a career. These include to make a difference in the lives of young people, to continue creativity and individuality in intellectual challenges, to make a worthwhile social contribution, share their passion for learning, especially in particular areas, and for personal fulfillment and a sense of achievement. Hence, we, CODTE V, train them to teach and make a difference. Today, April 23, 2021, is the Red Letter Day for CODTE V. We are conducting the first webinar of the Regional Pre-Service Teacher Education Congress with the theme Excellence and Relevance in Teacher Education under the New Normal. This Congress is geared towards the awakening and nurturing the young for the love of teaching, catering to their learning abilities, interests, and aspirations to become teachers under the new normal. The objectives of this Congress are to welcome the freshman and sophomore education students of the teaching profession and nurture the passion for teaching under the new normal, to attain relevance and achieve excellence in education by using the flexible learning and other modalities under the new normal. And last, to foster camaraderie among the fellow education students in the region. The crux of this Congress will be the use of digital technologies such as artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and virtual reality that is being increasingly adapted after the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. We hope that this half-day Congress will help students expand their mental horizon and help the education system adapt the best of the educational systems around the world. It is my pleasure to welcome all the participants today for this Regional Pre-Service Teacher Education Congress 2021. This successful intellectual undertaking is not possible without the presence of passionate and committed individuals who unconditionally spare their precious time just to convene for the betterment of our region, the country, and their citizens. I welcome all the eminent speakers, Director Freddy Bernal of CHED Region 5, Dr. Alan B. D. Guzman, Dean of the College of Education, University of Santo Tomas, Manila, and Dr. Milagros Barabo, the Program Coordinator, PACEC, CE, Centro Escolar University, and VP for Luzon, PAFTE National, all from different walks of life. You have come here to share your knowledge and vast experiences with the student community conducted on a digital platform in line with the social distancing norms due to COVID-19 pandemic. It is truly an excellent opportunity for learning under your guidance. With your fresh thoughts, optimistic approaches, and gentle behavior, we are sure that these teacher education students are in good hands. It is indeed a pleasant morning, all soaked in the deep celebration mood, ambience, and chirping of my fellow friends. Thank you for providing this enthusiasm and spirit of togetherness. I express my deep sense of gratitude to our correspondents, Mr. Ronnie L. Martinez, President, Lorimar Publishing Incorporated, and Dr. Carl Balita of Carl Balita Review Center for lending their hands in every path we chose. It is a day of rejoice because we recall together a lot of teaching stories we had experienced in the last few years. It is also a day for our old students, parents, and friends to know more about the recent and future development of the school. And while we do that, we remember that on every blade of grass, there is an angel sitting, saying time and again, grow, grow. At the end, we know we have only grown stronger and wiser. The happiness and satisfaction of the school, faculty, and students show all is well, or almost all is well. Thank you for your continued trust and faith. We set our own standard, strived to reach them, and elevated ourselves to higher planes. The learning, the evolving, and the effort will never cease. These are CODTE V officers and our CHED advisor, Dr. Rosemary Arrow, in action. Thank you so much for your unending support. I once again welcome you all. Everyone will be surprised by watching what is going to come on the screen. I'd like to thank everyone for giving me this opportunity. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Dr. Ditera. Thank you, Dr. Ditera. I am sure our pre-service teachers are now eagerly looking forward to a productive and meaningful day with our choice speakers. Also joining us today, my friends, to drum up our eagerness and enthusiasm, please welcome our amiable and very accommodating CHED 5 Regional Director, Dr. Freddy T. Bernal, CESO 3, to give us some words of inspiration.
Dr. Nelly A. Ditera, the President of CODTE V, Dr. Alan B. de Guzman, the keynote speaker, the Dean College of Education, University of Santo Tomas, Manila, our distinguished resource person, Dr. Milagros L. Burabo, Executive Director and Vice President for Luzon, PAFTE Nacional, Dr. Rosemary Arau, the Education Supervisor 2 of CEDRO 5 and Advisor of CODTE V, members of the board and officials of CODTE V, Deans of Teacher Education Programs, members of CODTE V, students, ladies and gentlemen, Diyos marhay na agas sa Indogabos. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused us to rethink our way of living our lives. It reminded us of our long-held but forgotten values. It also challenged the importance of our individual and collective roles that we play in the society. Several stories of sacrifice, survival, and hope inspired us to better ourselves and genuinely contribute to our communities, despite the limitations brought about by the pandemic. As a former teacher myself, I'm very proud of the contribution of our teachers in these trying times. The enormous effort that they had to do to continue their noble profession is a testament of their indomitable spirit and passion in sharing their knowledge to our dear students, the future of our world. With this, I am reminded by the quote of author Dewey Santamata. She said, "It is only in our darkest hours that we may discover the true strength of the brilliant light within ourselves that can never ever be dimmed." I believe that our teachers have discovered that brilliant light within themselves in these difficult times, and that this deadly disease have not dimmed it at all. However, the challenge of navigating the new normal way of education has just started. The teachers, as our frontliners, must be equipped with the right tools and knowledge to steer through this new normal. Moreover, we should not disregard the standard for our students to have a safe and excellent learning experience all throughout. Therefore, education stakeholders, such as higher education institutions and the Commission on Higher Education, should do its part in achieving these endeavors. On the part of the Commission on Higher Education, we assisted the SUCS in setting up its learning management system. We were also at the front seat in crafting and enforcing guidelines for the country's higher education system during the pandemic. The CHED encouraged tertiary education institutions to deploy available distance learning, e-learning, and other alternative modes of education delivery in lieu of the face-to-face learning. Additionally, CHED launched Feel CHED Connect, an online portal that will serve as digital hub for course materials for higher education institutions shifting to a flexible learning mode of learning. The Commission also introduced the High Ed Bayanihan program, a collaborative activity among various Philippine universities to help prepare colleges and universities to open the semester with distance learning through capacity building programs or training programs with faculty members. Furthermore, the Commission is continuously assessing the effects of online learning to students to improve our policies and guidelines. We are also closely monitoring the increased workloads and responsibilities of teachers because of the technical requirements of online learning. Also, CHED is partnering with the Department of Information and Communication Technology to improve and facilitate the Wi-Fi connection in the schools as we shift our learning mode. All these programs by CHED and other education stakeholders were geared towards promoting excellence and relevance in teacher education for the new normal, the theme of your convention today. The Commission is highly aware of the need to develop such relevance and excellence of teacher education for the contemporary state of our education. Highlighting the social and emotional learning skills of the students for the new normal classroom has been a challenge for education and human development. The integration of school, family, and community partnership, the primary tenet of social emotional skills learning for our new learning environment, will address various challenges that we are facing today. The students and the teachers deserve a positive approach like this to counter the anxiety, stress, and other psychological difficulties caused by the ongoing pandemic. Again, let me reiterate the support of the Commission on Higher Education, Region 5, in finding better ways on how to approach our new learning environment. Lastly, I would like to emphasize the importance of cooperation and compassion in these difficult times. We may not be physically together, but our love for life and learning transcends whatever trials that fate has thrown at us. May this be the guiding principle in your discussion in this year's Congress. On behalf of the Commission on Higher Education Region 5, I would like to congratulate the organizers for holding this greatly valuable event. May you all be healthy and safe. Again, marhay na aga sa Indugabos, Diyos mabalos.
Thank you, Director Bernal, for those very inspiring words. May I now request Dr. Nelly A. Gutera, CODTE V President, and Dr. Rosemary A. Arau, Education Supervisor 2, CHED Regional Office, and CODTE V Advisor, to award the Certificate of Appreciation to our Director. The citation reads, Council of Deans for Teacher Education Region 5 Bicol Incorporated extends the Certificate of Appreciation to Dr. Freddie T. Bernal, CESO 3, Director 4, Commission on Higher Education, Regional Office 5, for sharing his invaluable knowledge, time, and expertise as guest speaker during the 14th Regional Pre-Service Teacher Education Congress with the theme Excellence and Relevance in Teacher Education under the New Normal, held on April 23, 2021, via Zoom and Facebook Live, given this 23rd day of April 2021 at Ninong's Hotel, Legazpi City, Philippines. Signed, Nelly A. Gutera, EDD, CODTE President. Thank you, Dr. Gutera and Dr. Arang. Now we are all fired up and ready to listen to our keynote speaker. But first, let me give you our CODTE Treasurer, Dr. Bilen A. Azul, Dean of Our Lady of Salvation College, to introduce our guest of honor.
Good morning. It is a great honor and privilege to introduce a prolific speaker in this Congress, being done virtually amidst the pandemic. Our keynote speaker is a professor who handles pedagogy, management, and research courses at both graduate and undergraduate levels at the University of Santo Tomas, Manila. He is also a prolific writer in educational policy studies, adult learning, and teacher education. As such, he has extensively published a total of 126 articles in various international scientific indexing listed journals, and at the same time serves as editor, board member, and reviewer in international journals. He has received various prestigious awards, which include the 2007 Simeo Jasper Research Award given by the Government of Canada and the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization, or the Simeo, the 2006 National Research Council of the Philippines, NRCP, Department of Science and Technology, DOST, Achievement Award, and the 2011 Metrobank Foundation Search for Most Outstanding Teacher Award in Higher Education, among others. In an article published in the Journal of Scientometrics, Volume 91, Series of 2012 of the Springer, the Netherlands, Dr. de Guzman has been identified as the most productive and one of the most cited researchers in the fields of education and psychology in the Philippines. As a researcher, he pioneered the 2001, the introduction of the thesis by article style in the country, an innovation that has contributed much in the UST ranking in the QS Top 200 universities in Asia. At present, he is a research fellow at the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Regional Center for Innovation Technology, or we call it the CEMEO INTEC, and the president of the Metrobank Foundation Network of Outstanding Teachers and Educators, or the NOTED. His research interests include adult learning, teacher education, comparative education, and educational leadership and management. Our keynote speaker will tackle the topic, excellence and relevance in teacher education under the new normal. Friends, students, professors, deans, and CODTE officers, help me welcome the Dean of the College of Teacher Education of the University of Santo Tomas, Manila, Dr. Alan B. de Guzman.
Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker, Dr. Alan B. de Guzman, Dean College of Teacher Education, University of Santo Tomas, Manila, talk on the theme, Excellence and Relevance in Teacher Education under the New Normal.
Can you all hear me? Okay, so allow me then to start my sharing with you. Let me first open my slides. Okay, I hope everyone can see my slide now. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to our pre-service teachers, as well as those who are involved in teacher education. I don't want to call today's session as a form of webinar, although of course CODTE declared this one as something is webinar. Allow me to welcome you all to our conversation, a conversation among teachers. Ito po ay usapan ng mga guro. Ito po ay usapan ng mga nagiging guro. And for today, allow me to start our session now by giving you a kind of trivia. How many of our pre-service teachers in this virtual room have been trivialized that in your respective universities, there are programs that bear the name Bachelor of Science. There are some programs that are called Bachelor of Arts. But are you not trivialized by the fact that the college where you belong bears the name Bachelor in Education? Never we call our program as Bachelor of Science, or if not, Bachelor of Arts. Why? Because the field of education is both art and science. Take notes, our future teachers in the field, we belong to a field where we are, of course, an intersection of both art and what we call science now. And given now the fact that we come from the field of arts and science, allow me now to give you my talking points. Since we are a discipline that borrows a lot of concepts from different fields, whether science, arts, or humanities, I would like you to understand and at the same time journey with me as we collectively understand the meaning and the essence of excellence and responsiveness in terms of the following borrowed concepts from the different fields. One, in the course of our conversation, you will hear Dr. Alan discussing the word territoriality, something I borrowed from the field of political geography. Second, along the process, you will be able to encounter bumpy learning curve, which I am borrowing from the field of psychology. Third, I am borrowing the concept of liminality from the field of anthropology. Fourth, you'll be able to understand and appreciate more what botany is advancing, the so-called rhizomatic entities. And finally, going back to the field of psychology, I would like each one of you to understand and at the same time appreciate the value of growth mindsets as we become more excellent and more responsive now that we are under the new normal. My dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, as I start my presentation and my conversation with you, allow me to articulate my basic assumption. I am pretty sure that for the nth time, all our participants in this morning's session have been actively participating in different webinars using different video conferencing platforms, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and other kinds of platforms now. So my wish and prayer for today's session now, I hope that my conversation, I hope that my intersection with you this morning will not contribute once again to your webinar fatigue. My only wish and prayer at the end of this conversation is for me to be able to inspire all our teacher educators and much more, inspire our future teachers who are victimized by the COVID-19 pandemic. The title was given to me by the Council of Deans of Teacher Education in Region 5 is Excellence and Responsiveness in Teacher Education under the New Normal. When I received this invitation, I try, of course, to look at the title. And may I invite the members of the group now to see that there are two big concepts that we have to understand at the end of this 1-hour keynote speech. One is we have to understand and discern more on what excellence and responsiveness really mean now that we are in the new normal. And second, we would like to understand teacher education under the so-called new normal. And because of this topic given to me by the Council of Deans of Teacher Education Region 5, that reminded me of my two favorite books in 2015 and in 2020. I wish many of you here can read and can get hold a copy of these two important books. One is a published book and the other one is a published ebook. The first one was published by UNESCO in 2015 entitled Rethinking Education. An ebook published and launched in September 2020 is entitled Education Disrupted, Education Reimagined. I want you to look at two important words on the screen, the word rethinking and the word reimagination. Paano ba natin isasali ng dalawang salitang ito sa wikang nauunawaan ng lahat? I come from the province of Bulacan, and every time we look at the word rethinking, we always say, ito ay isang bagay na dapat nating muling pag-isipan. Every time you rethink on something, tayo ay nag-iisip muli. But remember, COVID-19 doesn't entail rethinking. COVID-19 is all about reimagining the future of education. And Doc Alan, coming from the province of Bulacan, how do we translate the word reimagining? Or some people would say, I cannot imagine. We would normally say, hindi natin lubos maisip kung paano natin malalagpasan ang hamon ng pandemyang ito. Madaling pag-isipang muli Subalit mahirap nating sabihin, hindi ko lubos maisip kung paano magpapatuloy ang pagtuturo, specifically in teacher education. My dear colleagues, whether of course we are in a pandemic or we are not in a pandemic, I would like you to remember this statement. Sa buhay ng isang guro o sa buhay ng isang tao, may mga bagay na nangyayari, subalit kailanman ay hindi nararanasan. Why don't we translate this one in English? There are things in life that keep on happening, but at times we don't seem to experience them. May mga bagay na nangyayari, subalit kailanman ay hindi nararanasan. And no wonder, this can be best understood when we start looking at the lyrics of this song. I hope you remember this song, Doon Lang. And I remember, the opening speech of the president of CODTE saying, why don't you enjoy the show? It's not a webinar, but enjoying the show. My dear colleagues, listen now to the lyrics of the song as I make this keynote as a show. We always listen to this song. Doon ay kaya kong ipunin lahat ng bituin. Doon ay kaya kong igapos ihip ng hangin. Doon ay kaya kong ipagbawal buhos ng ulan. Sa panaginip lang kita nahahagkan tuwina. Doon lang. That song, my dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, only applies when we say, may mga bagay, meron tayong nararanasan o nangyayari, subalit kailanman ay hindi nararanasan. Our conversation for this morning will also remind us of two important taglines, or if not, saying, in 1996 and in the year 2020. Probably many of our students right now have not yet been born, of course, in 1996. But please take note, in 1996, in the film Aladdin, the fifth song there is entitled, Are You In or Out? That statement was very popular in 1996. But since you belong to the Gen Z or the millennials now, millennials would normally say, sana all. My dear colleagues, our students, of course, in the virtual room, I hope you remember the one of EDSA Revolution in 1986. Isang bagay na nangyari sa kasaysayan ng bansa, subalit kailanman ay hindi ninyo naranasan. Why don't you ask yourselves the question, in EDSA Revolution, am I in or out? Or probably your answer is definitely out. Your teachers probably would say, I am in during that time. Do you remember, of course, our typhoon, the flood that happened recently in Marikina? Are you in or out? Again, you may probably, of course, telling me, Dr. Alan, I am out. How many of you still remembers when the Pope, of course, visited the Philippines in the year 2015? Are you in or out? And when you, of course, if you remember the one that happened sometime in December or January, when the volcano, of course, in Taal erupted, are you in or out? Or probably if I say volcano, of course, in Mayon erupted, then people from Region 5 would say, I am in. My dear colleagues, this brings us now to the concept or to the notion of one of the philosophers, Gabriel Marcel, who propounded on the concept of primary reflection and the one of secondary reflection. I am pretty sure that our students in the College of Education are familiar with the so-called reflexive exercises. But I would like you, of course, to deepen your understanding of reflection in terms of its two typologies. One is primary and the other one is secondary. As I have said, may mga bagay na nangyayari, subalit kailanman ay hindi nararanasan. Take notes, when you get to experience something as it happens, then your reflection happens to be something primary. Why? Because primary reflection talks about of whatever is genuine. But something might have happened, but you were not there. But you would like, of course, to reflect on that event. That reflection, according to Gabriel Marcel, is something secondary. It is not genuine, but something synthetic in nature. We all know for a fact that COVID-19 is a once in a century pandemic, according to Gates in the year 2020. And no wonder. Let me, of course, ask the members of the group, how do you look at your experience in terms of COVID-19? Are you having a primary reflection or the one of secondary reflection? All of us do have the so-called primary reflection. In terms of your favorite expression, the millennials, sana all, I want you, of course, to understand the historical roots of the expression sana all, which according to Monsi, a Bakwit school teacher from the University of the Philippines once said, the popular phrase sana all was first popularized by Karl Marx and Engels in their phenomenal work, The Manifesto of the Communist Party, wherein there was a plea to distribute wealth and the means of production across the population. Doon nagsimula ang ating sinasabing sana all. My dear colleagues, look at now the map of COVID-19. Are we in or out? Look at the map of COVID-19. Is sana all, as an expression of the millennial, a fact or a myth? Simply because all of us are affected by COVID-19. And even the United Nations once said, the global scale and pace of education disruption from COVID-19 is something that is unparalleled. Why don't we translate the word unparalleled in the context of the Filipino language? Doc Alan, coming from the province of Bulacan, we always say, walang kapantay, walang katulad, because practically everything got disrupted. And you know very well that the global health pandemic did not only disrupt our lives, but I think it has also, of course, brought us some, of course, kinds of paralysis. If we try to look different fields of human interest, manufacturing, healthcare, business, transportation, were all paralyzed by the pandemic. And every time we get paralyzed, at times we could not move. And no wonder, why don't we let me of course invite you now to take a look at our kasabihang Filipino. Noon, sinasabi natin, mabuti pa ang manakawan, wag lang ang masunugan. Sapagkat mahirap ang masunugan. But ngayon, anong sinasabi natin? Nasunugan ka na, ninakawan ka pa. And this is something very true in COVID-19. Marami ang nanakawan ng trabaho at maraming nasunog na mga memorya natin, especially in the actual classroom teaching and learning processes. My dear colleagues, kapag ang isang tao ay nasunugan, karaniwan ang ginagawa natin, tayo ay lumilikas na, tayo ay umaalis na, tayo ay naglilipat bahay na. In the parlance of the scholars, we normally call this one as a form of migration. And all of us, simply because of the global health pandemic, were all, of course, forced to undergo the so-called online migration. Hindi na balita ang COVID-19. And you know very well the massive disruption that we experience, particularly in the entire education system. It is not only the deans of the College of Education that were affected by the COVID-19. All of us, the learners, the teachers, the school leaders, the parents, and even policymakers alike. And no wonder, I would like you, of course, to understand in this session, in this keynote speech, that every time we look at teacher education, its excellence, its responsiveness, we have to understand very well the so-called inseparability of in-service education and the one of pre-service education. For those of you who are still undergoing the process of learning how to become teachers, your first 4 years in the College of Education, that's your pre-service education years. But for your teachers who are actually training you to become teachers, they are already part of in-service education. And when I was listening to the keynote, to the opening remarks of our presidents, there was a mention that majority of our participants in today's session are freshmen and sophomores. And I'm pretty sure these are the people who were deprived of the so-called face-to-face classroom teaching in the College of Education. And please take note, by the time, of course, we continue the same setup in the years to come, you will all inherit in your respective classrooms students who were also part of the online migration. Pre-service and in-service education are inseparable. In the College of Education, you are being nurtured by your teachers. But by the time you start teaching in your respective classrooms, you will be cultured now by the different experiences of your teaching career. My dear colleagues, let me invite you once again to take a look at excellence and responsiveness. These are two big words to understand in 1 hour's time. Excellence and that of responsiveness in teacher education. But allow me, of course, to translate this one in a more laymanized term in order for our pre-service education teachers to understand what this talk is all about. I would like to invite now all our sophomore and even our freshman teachers to understand the concept of teachership. Every time, of course, you hear the word scholarship, we always say it is the ship of scholars. Principalship is the ship of principals. Speakership is the ship of speakers now. And when we say, for example, teachership, it is the ship of teachers. Now that you are part of the College of Education, we always say, birds of the same feather flock together. Kayo ngayon ay nasa kulay ng edukasyon upang maging isang ganap na guro. And please take note, if you are part of the family of teachers, you must be, of course, embracing the so-called teachership, which, of course, is defined by Doc Alan as a combination of something you are and some things you do. If you want to become part of the shape of teachers, you need to be competent and you need to have certain kinds of character. Tagalogin natin ang dalawang ito. Kapag sinabi nating character, ang mga guro ay kailangang may dating. Ang mga guro ay kailangang may galing. Ang tanong, in the COVID-19, under the new normal, anong galing ang kailangan natin? And what kind of character do we need? Dating at galing. Meron kayong mga kaibigan o mga kaklase, ang lakas ng galing, ang lakas ng dating, pero wala namang galing. Meron namang iba dyan, ang galing-galing naman, pero walang dating. For those of you who would like to become successful teachers in the field, you need to have both character and competence. Ikaw ay may galing, ikaw ay may dating, especially during COVID-19. And this brings me now to my first talking points, number 1, which is excellence and responsiveness in teacher education is all about dynamic territoriality. From the word territory, Again, I am borrowing the concept of territory and the concept of territoriality from the fields of political geography. These are what we call key concepts in political geography. Why don't you start asking yourselves the question now? There are times we are near something. There are times we are far, of course, for something now. And this is where, of course, we start saying, is it still part of my territory? In other words, why don't you start assessing your distance, to a place? If the distance, of course, is very short, about 0.5 meters, it is your territory said to be something very intimate. So therefore, close na close ka doon at masasabi mong ito ang aking teritoryo. But political geography would tell us, if your distance, of course, from something is about 3 meters now, then the territory is about said to be personal territory. But if it is, of course, beyond 3.0 now, it becomes your social territory. And no wonder, every time we are in our own territory, we feel safe. Sa Tagalog, kapag sinasabi nating, huwag kang maingay, nandito ka sa aking teritoryo, you always, of course, feel very safe. My dear colleagues, why don't you take a look at two pictures on the screen? The face-to-face teaching that we used to have for several years, and the one of the online teaching and the online learning that we have been experiencing for the last 13 months. I'm pretty sure many of your teachers would say, my, of course, degree of closeness to the classroom is something intimate. Halos buong buhay ng mga guro ay nasa classroom. Halos buong buhay ninyo before, of course, you enter the College of Education ay nasa classroom kayo from 7 o'clock to 5 o'clock when you were still in grade school, high school, and up to senior high school. But remember now, there is, of course, a sudden kind of disruption. Our classroom has become our territory for so many years. We have territorialized ourselves in the classroom for so many years. But last March 15, 2020, there was, of course, the so-called deterritorialization. We changed our territory. And our territory now is no longer, our physical classroom, but this time facing our laptop, facing, our mobile phones. That's why many of our teachers probably last year were thinking, makakabalik pa kaya tayo sa classroom? Maibabalik pa kaya natin ang mga dati nating ginagawa? And this is what we call the act of re-territorializing. I want you to understand it in life, we territorialize. And no wonder our students in the College of Education who are now in first year or second year, you are trying to make teaching as your new territory. And time will come, you will become a principal, and that is what you call deterritorializing. But some principals still teach, and no wonder they are trying to re-territorialize themselves. My dear colleagues, true or false? Hindi kayo nakakasagot sa akin because you're all muted. I think many of you will agree with this statement of Doc Alan, super miss na natin ang face-to-face classroom teaching and learning process. Every time I teach in the College of Education, I would always handle the special topics in education. And this is where I would normally structure my 3-hour class with my third-year students in special topics. I would normally divide it, from 7 to 7:20, we do have our song and movement time. Miss na miss ko na ang aming pagtatamburin sa klase. Miss na miss ko na ang aming kantahan sa loob ng klase. Miss na miss ko na ang mga preschool teachers ko habang sila'y sumasayaw, habang sila'y kumakanta, habang sila'y nagsasaya. Miss na miss ko na ang pagbivideo sa mga bata in the actual classroom teaching. At miss na miss ko na ang pagsasayaw sa klase, ang pagtuturo kung paano magturo, kung paano gumamit ng tambourine, kung paano magkaroon ng isang teaching demonstration. Miss na miss ko na ang 7:21 to 8 o'clock, kung saan tinuturuan ko ang mga bata kung paano nga ba ang tamang paraan ng pagkukwento. Miss ko na ang mga batang nagkukwento. Miss ko na ang mga teachers habang nag-e-enjoy, habang sila'y kinukwentuhan ng kanilang mga kapwa-guro. Miss ko nang tingnan ang kanilang pakikinig sa nagkukwento. Miss ko na ang bawat sandali sa classroom. Miss ko na ang pagtaas ng kanilang mga kamay. At miss ko na ang kanilang mga halakhak. My dear colleagues, every time 8:01 to 8:40 comes, miss ko na rin ang aming art work time. Miss ko na ang pagsalampak ng mga bata sa flooring habang naggugupit, habang nagkukulay, habang nagkukwentuhan, habang gumagawa. Miss ko na ang aming birthday celebration. every time my birthday comes, they would always, of course, transform my art class now into an art class full of birthday activities. Miss ko na ang aking classroom. Miss ko na ang face-to-face classroom. Miss ko na ang paggawa namin ng leaf craft. Miss ko na ito. Miss ko na ang mga bagay na yan. Ilan sa mga bagay na karaniwan namin ginagawa sa loob ng classroom. Miss ko na ang aming clay craft. Miss ko na ang aming egg tray craft. Miss ko na ang mga bagay na ito. Ang sandpaper craft. Miss ko na ang paggawa nila ng mga bagay na ito tulad ng popsicle stick art. Ilan sa mga bagay na ginagawa na aking mga mag-aaral. Miss ko na rin ang 8:41 to 9 o'clock. It's game time, kung saan nakikita ko ang paglaro ng aking mga estudyante ng tangrams, nag-iisip kung paano makakagawa ng mga letra, makaka-form ng mga animals at iba't ibang mga figures gamit ang kanilang tangrams. Miss ko na ang paglalaro namin sa loob ng klase. Mga kapatid, all of you will agree with me. All of us have been deterritorialized. Tayo ay nasunugan, tayo ay nawalan, tayo ay naglipat bahay. And no wonder in Philippine cinema, anong sabi ng mga guro sa likod ng kanilang mga isipan, kung maibabalik ko lang ang face-to-face classroom. Sabi ng pelikulang Pilipino, sana maulit muli. And because we have been deterritorialized, anong sabi ng ating mga guro? Inagaw mo na ang lahat sa akin. And every time you teach in the online environment, anong sabi ng mga guro? Gaano kadalas ang minsan? And because we have been deterritorialized, anong sabi ng mga guruan at sabi ng mga future teachers? Ganito kami noon, paano po kami ngayon? And because we have been deterritorialized, tulad ng isang pelikula, lahat ng bagay ay hiram. Hiniram lang natin ang classroom. Ngayon ay iba na ang ating ginagawa. Now let me ask you the question, what defines you now as a teacher in the classroom? What defines you now as a teacher in the online teaching environments? What kind of personality do you have? How many of you, both students and teacher educators, are still holding on to the past? And how many of you have learned how to let go and start embracing the new normal? Wag po tayong matakot. Even, of course, one of the biggest companies in the Philippines, if you remember the case of ABS-CBN, they have been also deterritorialized. But they have found a new home. They have found a new place, partnering with other TV networks, maximizing the use of the online environments. And no wonder we can still manage to watch many of the programs of ABS-CBN. That's why this brings me now to an Alanic dictum, which I call, as a consequence of deterritorialization, all of us are now operating in 4 new, different, and challenging spaces. What are these spaces now that I am trying to refer to? I hope many of you here who are now on the online environments are familiar with this matrix developed by Daniel Stanford in the year 2020. Yan na po ang ating bagong mga classroom ngayon. At one point, many of your teachers at times are conducting the so-called asynchronous discussion. They would normally send you a pre-recorded video. Why? Because they would like to see themselves in the quadrants wherein the bandwidth is very high sapagkat panonoorin nyo ito, but there will be the so-called low immediacy. By low immediacy, of course, we mean we don't normally require our students to interact with us because everything is recorded. There are times teachers or students are in the red region wherein everything is done synchronously. At karaniwan sa mga estudyante nalalaglag because of poor connection in the net. And this is where the reason why, of course, it is colored red is because you need high bandwidth and you need to interact with your teachers, high immediacy. There are times your teachers will bring you to the green quadrants wherein there will be low bandwidth and there will be, of course, low immediacy. Why? Because teachers will just simply send you some email messages, or if not, of course, will give you some reading materials to read. The green one is not so problematic. Why? Because learning still continues, teaching still continues. But there are times you get to see yourselves collaborating with your classmates, using your Google Drive, you share documents, you collaborate, of course, using, of course, the different platforms. These are the 4 new classrooms now of teachers and the students. But the question is like this: are you still grieving in the new normal? Take note, before the pandemic, everything runs smoothly. Everything runs smoothly. We are, of course, experiencing the so-called stability. But do you remember, of course, the time when the President of the Republic declared that the whole country will be placed under the enhanced community quarantine, or under, of course, the so-called lockdown, only for 15 days? We were all immobilized. We were all, of course, locked down in the classroom, hoping that by April 30, April 1, take note, April 1, April, of course, Fool's Day, we were all hoping na makakabalik tayo muli sa classroom. Pero nagkamali tayo sa ating akala, because classes continued online in April until May. And sometime, of course, in June, the Dean of the College of Education announced our semester, our classes will be delivered online, or if not, in blended learning. Marami ang nagalit. In July, some of our teachers keep on bargaining. Dean, baka naman pwede po nating maituloy pa ang face-to-face instruction. Ang sabi ng Dean, we have to comply with what IATF is telling us. And no wonder, many of our teachers, many of our students from August to December suffered from depression. Walang magawa. That's why from August to December, we keep on testing possibilities. And from January of 2021 to date, ang tanong ko po, how many of you here are still grieving? How many of you here have learned how to accept the new normal? How many of you here have learned how to embrace the challenges and even the imperatives of the new normal in teacher education? This brings me now, and all of us, to my second talking point: excellence and responsiveness in teacher education is all about bumpy. I'm now putting the word bumpy learning curve. Many of you here in your foundations of education, you learned, of course, the meaning of learning. Of course, it takes some time before one gets to learn something new. But the learning curve we are forming as teachers may be bumpy at times. Sa Tagalog, minsan mabato ang daan. Minsan, hindi patag ang daan. I hope we don't, of course, forget what Will Durant once said: education is a progressive discovery of our own ignorance. Tingnan ninyo inyong mga guro sa College of Education. Many of them have the master's degree. Many of them have the PhD at the end of their name. But they are also victims of COVID-19. And many of them have realized, I'm still ignorant of a lot of things in the field of education. The journey of teachers and students in the COVID-19 and teacher education have become very bumpy. Why? We needed, of course, to learn a lot of new platforms. Many of you here probably are using Microsoft Teams. Some of you, of course, have tried Zoom. Some are using probably Google Meet. Some, of course, are using Canvas. Some of you probably are using Google Classroom. Or some of you will just simply make use of Messenger. Or some of you are subscribing to Edmodo. Or some of you, of course, may be using Moodle and other forms of video conference sites. But always remember, our learning during this time is something very bumpy. and no one will learn something new. Alam natin yan. Pag tayo'y guro, our ultimate purpose is to effect learning in our students. But learning is not, of course, an overnight activity. Learning takes time, and learning takes a lot of exposure and a lot of what we call experiences. Tandaan nyo ba, nung una natin ginagamit ang ating mga different platforms, ano sabi ng mga teachers nyo? Okay to ha, mukhang masaya. Parang masaya yatang mag-online ngayon. But there was a time, anong sabi ng mga guru natin sa College of Education? Parang umihirap na yata itong platform na to because, I'm used to this kind of way of teaching in the classroom. And there was a time, anong sabi ng teacher nyo? No idea what I am doing, but I keep on doing it. In other words, sabi ng mga teachers, bahala na. Anyway, ginagawa ko naman to, nakakaraos naman. Or if not, some of them may be uttering, mukhang nakukuha ko na yata ang pagtuturo sa online teaching. Or, sabi ng iba, hinto muna, parang mahirap pa rin. Or if not, ang sabi ng mga guro na nahihirapan talaga, parang wala talaga akong alam. Parang nawabura, nawala lahat ang PhD ko. Or, some of them would say, wait, I think what I'm doing right now is making sense. And until such time, we want to see ourselves saying, did I just do that? Nagawa ko ba yun? And most of us will see ourselves, in this region, telling other people, nagawa ko ito ng tama. Nagawa ko ito ng walang alinlangan. Many of you here are wishing to experience reterritorialization. Gusto nating bumalik sa face-to-face teaching. But whether we like it or not, my dear colleagues, Zizek in 2021 said, there is no return to normal. The new normal will have to be constructed on the ruins of our old lives. Ang isang taong nasunugan, hindi na makakabalik sa dati niyang bahay. Ang babalikan mo na lang ay ang mga memorya, your memories in the past. There is no return to normal. Why? Kapag tayo ay hindi na tayo makabalik, we need a road. And I constructed in this talk two kinds of road. Coronavirus or COVID-19 is giving us two kinds of roads in teacher education. The first one is the road of continuity, and the other one is the roads of change. Philosophically speaking, many of you here will find the two statements contradictory. Change and continuity. Very hard to put them together in one sentence. Let us bring change and continuity together. Why? Why change if you will continue? And why continue if you will change? There are things, of course, that we keep on doing that we need to continue. Now, teaching is something that we need to continue, but the way we teach will have to change. And this is, of course, what change and continuity is all about. 2020 and beyond, these are the two roads of teacher education, the road of change and the road of continuity. And in order for us to appreciate this road, we need to see ourselves operating in this space, in the space of interrogation. Ito ang espasyo kung saan tayo ay laging nagtatanong tungkol sa mga pagbabago at tungkol sa mga bagay na pwede pa nating ipagpatuloy. But every time we continue things that we used to do in the past, we should always, of course, ask ourselves, is excellence still there? And its responsiveness evidence in the changes that we plan to implement. Walang masamang magpatuloy, basta excellent. Walang masamang magbago, basta excellent. Walang masamang ipagpatuloy ang dati, basta excellent. Walang masamang baguhin ang mga bagay ngayon, basta responsive. My dear colleagues, as teacher education institutions now, are we doing more with less? Are we doing less with more? Or are we doing more with more? Or doing less with less? May mga guro sa colleges of education, wala namang connection. But they are doing more with less. Many of our students have the connectivity, but they are doing more with more. Why don't you ask yourselves the question, where do you all belong under these four possibilities? People would always say that COVID-19 is a perfect storm for reform. That reform that we are referring to. Pasimplihan natin, ang reformang tinatawag natin ngayon is more of what we call learning, relearning, and unlearning. Very easy to learn, but I think many of you will agree with me. Two of the most difficult things to do right now, especially for aging teachers, especially for what we call close-minded people, is relearning and at the same time unlearning. We always say you can bring a horse to the river, but not force the horse to drink water from it. Mga kapatid, mga kaguruan, balikan natin ang ating pag-unawa sa salitang learning. We all learn in the College of Education that what we are doing, the reason why we are teaching our students, is because we want to see some kind of behavior in them, new behaviors in them. But every time, of course, we see a change in the behavior, we want to make it something permanent in nature. We want, of course, to make something indelible in nature. And no wonder we always want to make sure that everything we provide our students with are all experiential because nothing compares with our hands-on experiences. Balikan natin ito ulit mga kapatid, excellence and responsiveness in teacher education. Are you excellent now? Are you responding to the challenges of COVID-19? Kaya nga, every time, of course, people would ask you the question, kamusta na po kayo ngayon? Anong sagot ng mga teachers, ng mga nakalipas na buwan? Heto, naninibago. And no wonder, ang nakalagay sa topic natin, under the new normal. Kapag ang isang bagay ay nakasanayan at binago natin because of what we call deterritorialization, normal ang manibago. And no wonder when people ask you, kamusta ka ngayon? Heto, naninibago. I want to see now a better topic. I don't want to use the word new normal. I want you, of course, to replace this with the word under the better normal. Pwedeng new ang isang bagay, but you keep on doing old things. But if you happen, of course, to have something new and you make it better, when people start asking you, kamusta po kayo ngayon? Anong sagot natin? Heto, sanay na sa pagbabago. And better, of course, than this situation is this. When somebody asks us the question, kamusta ka ngayon? Heto, sinasanay na ang mga naninibago. If you do have, online influencers, I believe the teachers are effective influencers in the classroom. That we can, of course, be very contagious, trying to influence people to embrace technology now. My dear colleagues, your understanding of education will enable you to understand what excellence and responsiveness in teacher education under the new normal is all about, under the loss of learning now. Bakit natin sinasabi to? It only takes the law of readiness. Inihanda lang tayo ng COVID sa pagbabago. It only, of course, takes the law of exercise. Why don't you ask yourself for the last, 13 months, we have become, of course, accustomed to the online environment, whether we like it or not. And we have become, of course, used not to do things in the classroom. We have, of course, been used to teaching with our polo, but wearing now, of course, our shorts and wearing our sleepers. Why? Because of the law of disuse. Hindi natin ginagamit ang ating mga sapatos ngayon. Now, it's just a matter of organizing things now. Ang isang taong nasunugan at lumipat ng bahay, kailangan nating mag-ayos ng gamit. That's why we learn in the College of Education the law of meaningful organization. And we also learn from the College of Education the law of effects. We always say, at the end of the rainbow, there's always a pot of gold. Tandaan niyo po, lilipas din ito. This too shall pass. Pagbalik natin sa classroom, tayo po ay mga bagong nilalang. Bakit? Magaling tayo sa dati nating ginagawa at pagbalik natin, marami tayong baon na mga bago nating ginagawa. And that makes us now relevant, responsive teachers in the classroom. Most of you will agree with the dictum of Doc Alan, that COVID-19 has truly transformed our teaching, learning praxis. I'm using the word transformation here. And even the deans now, are experiencing transformation in their leadership praxis. Imagine how your deans are managing the college in an online mode. They are conducting, meetings online, they're doing accreditation online, they're of course, holding activities, giving closing and opening remarks online. They do operational and strategic planning online. Na bago ang classroom, na bago ang leadership praxis. That's why, how many of you will agree with me? Because of COVID-19, marami ang binago, marami ang nabago. Because of COVID-19, marami pa ang pinagbabago. And because of this COVID-19, marami pa ang babaguhin. When we become responsive, we always entertain something new. If you want to be excellent, don't try, of course, old things. Why don't you try something new? And this brings me now to my next talking point, that excellence and responsiveness in teacher education is all about liminality. I just hope in your foundation of education, you encountered the word liminality. I am borrowing this one from the field of anthropology, something that was developed by Arnold van Gennep and the one of Victor Turner. Don't, of course, never mind the details, but I would like you to focus on the one in the lower portion of the screen, that liminality is all about transformational activity. Transformational activity. And no wonder COVID-19 has created our own liminal spaces. Pasimplihin natin, what is a liminal space? A liminal space simply means the rites of passage. All of us are pre-pandemic teachers. Lahat tayo ay nakapagturo bago pa ang pandemic. Now we have become the peri-pandemic teacher, and time will come, our sophomores and our, of course, our freshmen will become the post-pandemic teachers. All of us. Please take note. Ang rite of passage sa Tagalog ay meron tayong pinagdadaanan. You will never reach, of course, the terminal point without you, of course, going through the middle portion. And that middle portion is what you call liminal space. And no wonder, you get to hear other people, wag mo siyang kausapin, mainit ang ulo niya ngayon. Mukhang may pinagdadaanan. That word pinagdadaanan in anthropology means liminality. In layman's term, rites of passage. From March 15 up to date, all of us are going through the online teaching. At kapag tayo po ay may pinagdadaanan, tatlo ang stages sa ating dinadaanan dito. The preliminal, the liminal, and the postliminal. Ano ibig sabihin ng preliminal? This is the point wherein you got separated from your old self. Kumbaga, dati ka nagtuturo sa classroom, nung nag-declare ng online teaching ang din, now you are being separated from the physical classroom environment, and you call it the preliminal space. Nung magsimula ka ng magturo sa online environment, nakatingin ka sa iyong laptop, nagsasalita ka, kumakanta, nagtatamburin, lahat-lahat ginagawa mo para kang tanga, that's what you call the liminal space. And you learn this one from psychology. We are developing our threshold level. And that threshold simply means we keep on adjusting, we keep on calibrating, we keep on recalibrating. And after several months, kung magpapatuloy ang COVID-19, hanggang next year po, time will come, we will all be going back, of course, to our respective classroom. Tayo po ay born again na. Tayo po ay mga bago ng nilalang. May dating alam at mas maraming bagong alam. And this is what you call the post-liminal space. Look at your teaching learning space, my dear colleagues. Ang dami na nating inaaral ngayon. Ang dami na nating alam. And our experience, I believe, I think, our teacher educators will agree with me. Our experiences as teacher educators is a threefold experience. Why? Nasubukan nating magturo before the pandemic. Nasubukan nating magturo habang may pandemya. That's what you call peri-pandemic. At masusubukan pa nating magturo matapos ang pandemya. And no wonder, look at this analysis of Doc Alan. Nung tayo nagtuturo sa classroom, that is our comfort zone. Isang bagay na nakasanayan natin. Nung magturo tayo ngayon sa online, this is our purifying zone. At pagbalik natin, matapos ng COVID, ang tawag ko dyan is the resiliency zone. Babalik tayo sa ating mga classroom ng mas matibay at mas matatag. Tulad ng isang tao, kapag tayo ay nasa comfort zone, tayo ay nasa lupa pa. Kapag tayo ay namatay at marami tayong kasalanan, tayo ay dinadala doon sa purgatorio upang tayo ay maglinis ng ating mga kasalanan. Remember, when we become resilient after this pandemic, langit na ang pagtuturo. Bakit? Kahit yan ay face-to-face, kahit yan ay online yan, kayang-kaya ng bawat isang gurong Filipino. Why? Heraclitus once said, one cannot bathe in the same river twice. The only permanent thing in this world is change. Kung ikaw ay guro ng pagbabago. Kung ikaw ay guro, dapat nagtuturo ka ng laging bago sa iyong mga estudyante. Kaya, maniniwala po kayo sa akin na ang COVID-19 ay maraming aral na dala. Sa COVID-19, mas dumami ang mag-aral. Hindi lang yung mga estudyante, kahit ang mga teachers nag-aral ng mga bago. At dahil sa COVID-19, marami pa tayong pag-aaralan. Marami pa tayong gagawin. With the permission of the members of the council, I hope, of course, to ask for another 10 minutes in order for me, of course, to finish this session. Most of you will agree with me that every teacher or Filipino teacher struggles even before the pandemic. Kahit naman bago pang pandemya, tanungin nyo yung mga guro ninyo, mahirap nang magturo. Bakit? Gigising ka ng alas 5, papasok ka ng alas 6, alas 7 magtuturo ka, magagalit ka sa bata, magbibigay ka ng test, mag-check ka ng papel, ang daming trabaho. Pag uwi mo, mamimili ka pa. Now, every Filipino teacher struggles in the new normal. Bakit? We still encounter a lot of struggles. Nagbago lang ang ating konteksto. And to the future teachers, sa mga freshmen and sophomores, huwag kayong masisiraan na pinili ninyo ang teaching profession. Bakit? Even Ellsworth and Pitts in 2003 and 1997 once said, the teaching profession and the teaching vocation is a haven of difficulty, is a haven of indeterminacy, is a haven of uncertainty. Look at the word haven. It means kanlungan. Ang pinasok ninyong bukasyon ay kanlungan ng maraming paghihirap. Bakit? Ngayon, ang tinuro sa inyo ng mga teachers nyo is outcomes-based education. Pag nagturo na kayo, baka may bago ng plataforma ang Departamento ng Education. So mahirap muli sapagkat may bago na naman tayong gagawin. We belong to a field of indeterminacy and uncertainty. Walang katiyakan, walang kasiguruhan. That's why we are all teachers and we are after of learning. And I hope you will be inspired by what Wang in 2016 once said, the teaching profession and the teaching vocation, it is in this unsettling space that teaching hosts generative possibilities. Tayo ay nandoon sa isang spasyo, sa isang lugar na kung saan walang katiyakan ang maraming bagay. Yung tinuro ng teachers nyo noon, baka pag nagturo na kayo, mabago na. Nung nag-aaral kami, ang alfabeto is only 20 letters. Nung nag-aral kayo, 28 na. Baka dumating ang panahon, madagdagan pa ang mga titik o letra ng alfabeto. Why? Because we generate possibilities in teacher education. And always remember what these former deans in the US, Marilyn Cochrane Smith and Susan Little once said in 1999, teachers who know more teach better. Ang tunay na guro ay patuloy na nag-aaral, hindi ng lumang mga bagay, kundi ng mga bagong bagay. Let me share with the members of the group an article that I wrote in May 2020. Matapos ang 2 buwan, sumulat ako ng isang artikulo, and this was published. And this was the title of the article, From Globalization to COVIDification of Higher Education, Panic-Goji as a clarion to empowering today's learners. Probably, if you want, of course, to read this article, you will, of course, be amazed with 2 important words I am, of course, trying to introduce in the literature. The word panic-goji and the word COVIDification of education. I'm using the word COVID to form a new word, and I call this one COVIDified teacher education. Let me, of course, shed light more on what panic-goji is all about, from the word panic and from the word pedagogy. We are coining 2 words, panic and goji. Every time we panic, ano sabi mo, o nagpapanik ka na naman, ibig sabihin, yung taong yon ay natataranta. Correct? That's why when we say, itong taong to ay tarantado, ang word na tarantado po ay hindi mura, coming from the province of Bulacan. Tarantado is an adjective to describe someone who is panicking. Correct? That's why, marami sa atin nung nag-COVID-19 na taranta, marami sa atin tinataranta, at marami po sa atin ay tatarantahin pa ng mga hamon ng COVID-19. And I would like you to remember what the father of comparative education, once introduced, the so-called wholesale appropriation. Ano ibig sabihin ng wholesale appropriation? It is bringing, of course, an old practice to the new one. It is, of course, bringing, of course, something old to something new. Kapag tayo ay bumili ng bagong halimbawang damit sa SM at hindi kasya, what do we normally do? Pinapa-repair natin ito. Sapagkat kung gusto mo ng saktong-sakto sa iyo ang damit, huwag kang bumili ng gawa na. Magpatahi ka. Because in the concept of wholesale appropriation, we could not, transfer or fit in an old practice with the new practice. Nung tayo ay nag-online teaching po at nag-online learning, may mga bagay dati tayo sa classroom na hindi na natin pwedeng gawin sa online teaching. Parang isang halaman na inilipat ninyo sa isang bagong paso, makikita ninyo, after some time, unti-unting nalalanta ang isang halaman. And this is our experience during the first 5 months of COVID-19. Nung inilipat tayo sa online teaching, we become so incompetent. We become, of course, not confident in what we normally do. Kaya nga po, ang word na panic-goji was first introduced by professors from the University of Colorado Boulder. These are people from the College of Education, and they tried, of course, to coin a new term as early as March of 2020 now. Panic-goji is a combination of 2 words, panicking and pedagogy. Nung mag-declare ang presidente ng lockdown, nag-declare din ang Commission on Higher Education at inyong mga colleges of education deans, tayo ay mag-online na in whatever platform that you want to use. Everybody starts panicking while teaching. Sapagkat kapag tayo ay nagpapanik, ang nating naiisip natin is we want to understand students' practicality. Nung tayo ay nag-online teaching, marami ang nagtanong, paano kaya yung batang ito? Makapagpasa kaya siya? Yung kayang estudyanteng ito, may connection kaya ito? Natanggap kaya nila yung pinadala ko? We are all panicking. And this is what panic-goji is all about. And no wonder in this article that I wrote in May 2020, I developed, of course, panic-goji concerns. These are the concerns of panic-goji. according to Dr. Alan? One, nung tayo ay nag-online teaching, ang unang tinanong ng mga guro, paano ko i-modify yung content ko ngayon? Paano ko siya babawasan? Hindi na pwede ganitong karaming content ngayon. And no wonder we simply concentrated on what we call the most essential learning competencies, if I may borrow the language of the Department of Education. Nag-modify tayo ng content. Binawasan natin to. Bakit? Nag-aalala tayo, natataranta tayo na baka hindi matapos ang lesson at hindi maituro ang dapat na malaman ng estudyante. Second, nag-iisip din tayo. Hindi na pwede magpa-report in an online teaching. Anong iniisip natin? Why don't we of course start thinking anong strategy ang pwedeng gawin para matapos ng mga bata ang kanilang lesson at matuto ng dapat nilang matutunan. Tayo po ay nag-isip din bilang mga guro, paano na ako magpapa-exam ngayon? Online teaching na ito. How do I of course ensure that students, are not committing academic dishonesty with the things that they are submitting to me? Fourth, tayo ay nag-isip din, paano ko ipoprogram yung synchronous sa asynchronous? Gumaling tayo in terms of what we call online classroom management. Five, nag-isip din tayo, kapag nagtuturo kaya ako ng online, natututo kaya ang mga bata? Because chances are, there might be instances of unteachable moments. Unteachable moments. And finally, many of our teachers are asking the question, sa online teaching, how will I promote good pedagogical relationship? Yung dati-rati kung umiikot ako sa classroom, nakikita ko ba ang bata ngayon? Some of them are not even, opening their respective videos. My dear colleagues, I want to invite you now to understand what COVIDification of teacher education is all about. What is a COVIDified teacher education now? How do I define COVIDification of education in 2020? May I invite you to take a look at this definition. It is an adaptive move or response of academic institutions to reconfigure the content, delivery processes, modes of assessment, capitalizing on available technology infrastructure and means, whether synchronous or asynchronous, that are accessible to both teachers and learners at home, to ensure the achievement of agreed upon learning standards and competencies. Why don't we start, of course, looking at each, individually? Tingnan po ninyo ang ating ginawa. When COVID, of course, happens in 2020, all of us COVIDified education. How did we do it? We made use of some adaptive moves or response. Nag-adapt tayo. May mga binago tayo. And how did we adapt? We reconfigured our contents. We reconfigured our delivery processes. And we reconfigured our modes of assessment. Paano tayo nag-reconfigure? We capitalize on available technology. I'm pretty sure many of the deans here have started purchasing online platforms. Many of you have invested in technology. Why are we capitalizing on this? Simply because we want, of course, at the end of the day, to achieve the agreed upon learning standards and competencies. This is the meaning of COVIDification of education. We need to adopt adaptive move. We need to reconfigure. We need to adopt a scheme. We need to have some infrastructure in order for us to achieve our goals in teacher education. My dear colleagues, as I, of course, complete now my presentation this morning, I want you, of course, to understand excellence and responsiveness in teacher education are rhizomatic entities. What is a rhizome now? Zizek in 2020 said, COVID-19 restarted our time. COVID-19 created radical ruptures. Marami ang pumutok dahil sa COVID-19. Dahil sa COVID-19, marami ang nagsilabasan. Marami ang lumabas. Why? Because it brings about a contingency that becomes a new necessity. Dati, alternative lang siya. Ngayon, it has become a necessity. What do you mean by rhizomatic? Every time I teach curriculum development to my students, one of the concepts there is a so-called rhizomatic curriculum. Ang isang luya, ginger, is a form of rhizome. And you know very well that a rhizome is an underground plant stem. Sa ilalim tumutubo. At kapag tumubo ang luya, hindi pataas ang pagtubo. Ang pagtubo ng isang luya is done, of course, in a vertical way. Vertical yan. Ibig sabihin, as it grows horizontally, it gives way to new plants. At kaya makita niyo sa illustration ko po, merong 3 usbong ang aking rhizome ngayon. Why? Because it is growing silently horizontally, pero it generates more power. Tingnan ninyo mga deans. Dati-rate, ang mga deans ng education kapag nagpapatawag ng meeting, karaniwang ginagawa sa audiovisual room. Tama po ba ako mga deans of education in order for you to accommodate the teachers? Pero ngayon, nakita po ninyo, you have grown rhizomatically. Why? Ang dami ng umusbong para ma-meet nyo ang inyong dapat i-meet. Karaniwan, minimit nyo sa Zoom, Google Meet, Skype, Webex, Blackboard, Tuvuti, Wizik, Samba, dumami na. So in other words, hindi ba tayo masaya? Because of COVID-19, marami ng option ang dean. Kung ang dean babalik na sa kanyang opisina at gusto magpatawag ng meeting at ang teacher nasa labas, Zoom na lang ang meeting. Siguradong makaka-attend ang lahat ng teachers. Mga kapatid, this is what I call the rhizomatic tendencies happening now in teacher education. And then, tingnan po ninyo, dati-rate sa inyong classroom, nagbe-brainstorm lang kayo. Sabi ng teacher, why don't you of course, count now by 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all ones together, all twos together. And then kapag na-affirm na, have you found your groups now? Ano sabi ng teacher? Let's now have this brainstorming activity. At ang teacher umiikot. Pero ngayon, iba na. Marami ng umusbong sa ating pagtuturo. Some of you are using iBrainstorm, Padlet, Google Docs, Padlet, Trello, Miro, Lucidchart, brainstorming. Yan na ang karaniwang nakikita natin whenever our students are brainstorming in the classroom. Mga kapatid, for those of you, the sophomores, and then of course, our freshmen, tingnan ninyo ang 8 M's of teaching. Tinuro sa inyo yan yung mga guro sa College of Education. Maraming nagbago sa 8 M ng pagtuturo. From the milieu, to matter, to method, motivation, materials, media, measurement, and mastery. Lahat ng M's of teaching nagbago. All the M's of teaching have experienced the so-called rhizomatic movements now. And finally, as I close my session with you this morning, I want you to understand that excellence and responsiveness in teacher education is all about growth mindsets. Gusto kong maintindihan ito, even of course, every time I interview applicants in teacher education. Sabi ng bata, mababa po ang grades ko, pero pwede po ba ako mag-enroll sa College of Education? I would always, ask the students, may hilig ka ba sa bata? Mahal mo ba ang mga bata? May tiyaga ka bang magturo? Why? Ang nagtuturo, those who belong to the teaching profession, have the so-called growth mindsets. Why don't you read the book of Carol Dweck entitled Growth Mindsets? Because in life, either we have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. Some people will risk to change, but some people will risk to remain. For some of you who are rhizomatically moving, as you teach and as you learn, that goes to show you have your growth mindsets. Even, the chair of the International Commission on the Futures of Education once said, the COVID-19 has the potential to radically reshape our world, but we must not passively sit back and observe what plays out. Similar in the Bible, COVID-19 is not all about, change is not all about mana. Hindi yan babagsak mula sa langit. Kung gusto mong magbago ang iyong pagtuturo, maghirap ka. Kung gusto mong magbago ang pagtuturo, magtiyaga ka. gusto mo magbago mga bagay-bagay sa classroom mo, mag-aral kang muli. Sinasabi lagi ng mga teachers niyo sa College of Education, every time you teach in the classroom, you teach where the students are. Ako, memorize sa mga bata yan. Teach where the students are. Capitalize on their schema. Capitalize on their background experience. Pero minsan, yung sinasabi, hindi yon ang ginagawa. Bakit? If you remember, of course, Schaefer, the former, of course, chair, in the Asia Pacific UNESCO. Anong sabi niya? Why do children fail in the classroom? Is it because they live too far? Nung face-to-face pa tayo, sabi nila, bumabagsak ang bata kasi malayo ang bahay pagdating sa klase, late na. But now that we are in the online teaching, always remember, the school is too far from children. Children play not because parents are too poor, but simply because the school is too expensive. Always remember, students fail, not because they are bored in the classroom, because the school and even the teachers are boring. Children fail not because they don't speak the language of the school, but simply because, tingnan po natin to, all the 35 deans of colleges of education in Region 5, I think we have to admit that there are times the school does not speak the language of the child. And no wonder the Tower of Babel syndrome happens. Iba yung language ng mga bata, iba ang language natin. Mga kaguruan sa kolehiyo ng edukasyon, these are the new language of our students. These are their platforms now. These are the ways by which, of course, they can learn new things. Ang tanong, nagamit ba natin sila before the pandemic? Ginagamit ba natin ito ngayong pandemya na? Why we don't seem to speak the language of our students? And no wonder, as I close my session this morning, allow me, of course, to highlight what Pacheco said. The COVID-19 pandemic has submerged us all in the tsunami-like economies of the cloud. Everything now is cloud-based. And we are now, of course, in the rhythm of adaptation to the Internet of Things. Lahat ng mga bagay connected na sa Internet. Balikan natin ang librong ito in 2015, where UNESCO once said, revisiting the purpose of education and the organization of learning in a changing global context, it is a call for both public policy dialogue and forward-looking research on learning systems in the 21st century. Nangyayari na. The learning systems in teacher education or in colleges of education is taking place right now. Why don't we nurture it? And as I end my presentation, allow me to address these slides now to the deans, the 35 deans of Region 5, managing colleges of education. My proposal is for us to start working collectively toward a flexible, learning-based teacher education institution. Kung dati-rate, wala tayong flexible learning system, pagbalik natin after the pandemya, I hope we can still retain the flexible learning system and make our colleges of education as a flexible learning-based college of education. Anong ibig sabihin nito? We are all good in content. Alam natin to. Magaling tayo pag nagtuturo sa face-to-face sa content. We are all good in pedagogy. Every time we teach in a face-to-face, we teach them strategies, we teach them methods, we teach them motivation, we teach them assessment. But what is lacking among teachers now? Ang kulang sa atin ay yung tinatawag nating technological knowledge. The reason why we could not make or flex our learning system in the College of Education is because many of our teachers in the College of Education are not technologically proficient and competent. And no wonder, if you remember now, Mishra, he of course propounded the TPAC model now. Tingnan nyo, pag magaling ka sa technology, pwedeng mag-usap yan sa content. And no wonder, pag tagtuturo tayo ngayon, we can deliver the contents of education using technology. At dahil magaling tayo sa pedagogy, nag-usap ang PK at CK. Naging PCK siya ngayon. at nang mag-usap ang ating galing sa pagtuturo at ang ating galing sa paggamit ng mga platforms and other forms of applications, we have become technologically knowledgeable. Kapag nag-usap ang tatlong yan all together, that's what you call TPAC in the College of Education. I hope this is a challenge now for the Council of Deans of teacher education institutions in Region 5. My invitation to all, why don't we make it as our collective vision, not only in NCR, our mission and our passion, that every teacher that we have in the College of Education is a TPAC teacher. And every teacher that we produce in the College of Education is a TPAC, pre-service teachers. Good in content, good in pedagogy, good in technology, trying to make the three, dialoguing, of course, with one another, and they become a TPAC teacher. Remember, my dear colleagues, teachers who know more teach better. At the end of the day, we remain to be as the key determinant to our students' experiences and outcomes. At the end of the day, teachers, tayo po mga guro, are the ones primarily responsible for the achievements of our students in the classroom. And no wonder, mga kapatid, ng mga dekano, dekana ng Kolegyo ng Edukasyon, ito po ang inyong mga hamon na babaunin ko. Ito ho ang slides na para sa inyo as we venture into flexible, learning-based teacher education in the Philippines or in the region, Region 5. Ito ho ang 8 na dapat nating tignan. Look at the learning experience design of your college now. How do your teachers design and develop productive learning experiences so that every learner is able to make most of the learning opportunities they afford? This is where affordances will come in. Tinuturo natin yan, affordances. Second, may I invite all the deans of education to look at the learner content engagement. Since the content is given now online, why don't you start looking at your mechanism, whether or not the learner's engagement and interaction with the subject matter is always intact and consistent with their learning styles. Third, deans of education. Tingnan ninyo ho, sa inyong mga plataforma, sa inyong mga polisiya, the learner-teacher engagement now. Look at now the choices that learners have in relation to the mode and method of their engagement and interaction with their teachers and tutors. Fourth, why don't you look at the learner-learner engagement, the mode and method of their engagement and interaction with their peers in small and large groups. 5, why don't you look at their engagements with the learning environments? Wi-Fi access is one of the biggest problems. It is only, of course, about online. Why don't you start devising ways by which lessons can be, taken by your students in the off-grid modes? 6, why don't you start looking at the learner engagement with assessment activities, whether or not the students are fulfilling their assessment requirements? 7, why don't you look at the quality of your teacher's feedback with what we call the activities of the learners? And 8, why don't you start looking, even if everything is delivered online, are your students still connected with your university? Can they still identify themselves with the institution? These are the 8 challenges that the deans of education will have, of course, to reckon with in the years to come. Mga kapatid, mga kaguruan, in a flexible learning-based teacher education institution, muli nating pag-isipan o hindi lubos maisip. Sabi ng iba, practice makes perfect. Hindi ako naniniwala. Kasi kung na-practice na natin ang pagtuturo sa classroom, bakit tayo nahihirapan sa online? Ang mahalaga ay ito. I hope you can read this book entitled Practice Makes Practice. Gumagaling ka dahil nagpa-practice ka lalo. Because practice makes practice. In this book, Britzman, once said, and I quote, "Learning to teach is always a process of becoming, a time of formation and transformation, of scrutiny into what one is doing and who one becomes." Maraming nangyari sa loob ng 3 buwan. In conclusion, mga kapatid, with or without the pandemic, quality teaching is everybody's business. With or without pandemic, quality teaching is everybody's territory. Huwag kalimutan, the freshman and the sophomore, kailangang may dating sa pagtuturo, kailangang may galing. Naaral niyo yan sa College of Education. To create pedagogical situation, you need the content, you need the teacher, you need the student. Pero in the online teaching environment, bago na ang lahat. The content is still there, educators are still there, learners are still there. But I hope the deans of the colleges of education will also provide ways and means by which your teachers and your future teachers will also be trained on how to deal with parents. Why? Because parents now are part of the pedagogical triangle. As the students, learn online, parents look at the contents. Parents, of course, would from time to time, would follow up or would even, of course, be a witness as their sons and daughters, interact with the teachers. Ito na ho ang bagong pedagogical triangle. And parents will still have to communicate with the teachers. My dear colleagues, as I end my presentation with you this morning, my wish and prayers like this, that every Filipino teacher succeeds in making the new normal a better normal. And as we end, our session, sorry ho kung ako yung nag-extend, but I hope you will be able, of course, to be inspired by this song entitled The Teacher's Prayer. You know this song, Old Christmas Tree? Lord, in this very hour I pray to give me strength and will today. Lord, be my guide, so I will be the kind of teacher you want of me. In serving others, let me see that serving thee is loving thee. Give me, O Lord, thy great heart to feel the warmth of your wondrous love. Sa Tagalog, Panginoon, dinggin mo itong samo ng puso ko, maging gabay, nawa ako na sang-ayon sa turo mo, ang maglingkod sa kapwa ko, aking tugon sa hamon mo, linisin mo itong puso, maging ganap akong guro. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat.
Wow, I wish I could ask everyone to give Doc Allen a big round of applause. That was indeed a ton of knowledge and selfless sharing of valuable information for our pre-service teachers. Thank you so much, Doc Allen. Your virtual engagement with us today will leave an imprint in our hearts and minds as we move forward in our mission to educate the young Bicolanos. Thank you so much. May I know again, give you Dr. Nelly A. Dutera and Dr. Rose Marie Arau to award the certificate of commendation to our keynote speaker. Let me read the citation. Council of Deans for Teacher Education Region 5 Bicol Incorporated presents this certificate of commendation to Dr. Alan B. De Guzman, Dean College of Education, University of Santo Tomas, Manila, for generously sharing his invaluable knowledge, precious time, wealth of experience, and unparalleled expertise as keynote speaker during the 14th Regional Pre-Service Teacher Education Congress with the theme Excellence and Relevance in Teacher Education under the New Normal, held on April 23, 2021 via Zoom and Facebook Live. Given this 23rd day of April 2021 at Ninong's Hotel, Legazpi City, Philippines. Signed, Nelly A. Dutera, EDD, CODTE V. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ditara and Dr. Arau. You have been glued to your computer for the last several minutes, actually more than an hour. And I know the next number would be a welcome breather for all of you. So at this point, we want to treat you to a beautiful song number from the Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education student from Southern Luzon Technological College Foundation Incorporated, Pilar. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Jessa May Eufemia Alcantara.
Who'd have thought this is sweet? I shouldn't even try making sense of it. I forgot how we ever came this far. I believe we had reasons, but I don't know what they are. So blame it on my heart that moves in mysterious ways. It's always so surprising how love appears over the horizon. I love you for the rest of my days, but still it's mystery of how you ever came to me, which only proves love moves in mysterious ways. Heaven knows love is just a glance we take. We make plans, but love demands a leap of faith. So hold me close, never ever let me go. Even though we think we know which way the river flows, that's not the way love goes. No, love moves in mysterious ways. It's always so surprising how love appears over the horizon. I love you for the rest of my days, but still it's mystery of how you ever came to me, which only proves love moves in mysterious ways. Like a ticking of clock, too hard to beat as one. But I'll never understand the way it does. Oh, love moves in mysterious ways. It's always so surprising when love appears over the horizon. For the rest of my days, but still it's mystery of how you ever came to me, which only proves love moves in mysterious ways. Love moves in mysterious ways.
Thank you, Ms. Alcantara, for that beautiful rendition of Love Moves in Mysterious Ways. My dear teacher participants, it's now time to give you another eloquent speaker who will be introduced by our PIO, Dr. Lilianita C. Del Rosario, Dean, Lanting Kasauhu Educational Foundation, Incorporated.
A blessed morning, everyone. Our resource speaker for this year's CODTE Regional Pre-Service Teacher Education Congress is an eloquent vehicle of women empowerment. She's the former program director of the Professional and Continuing Education of Centro Escolar University, where she also served as the head of the Human Resource Department for 4 years and head of the Multimedia Instructional Assistance Department for 2 years. She was the former principal of San Miguel College Grade School for 3 years and also served as the Reading, Language, and Filipino Coordinator for 15 years. An academic achiever, our resource speaker graduated with Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education degree, magna cum laude from Philippine Normal College, where she also earned her Master of Arts degree in Filipino Linguistics. She finished her Doctor of Philosophy, major in Curriculum and Supervision, with highest academic distinction and Excellence in Research Award. She has been a professional chairholder of the Natividad El Ampil on Child Development. She is a former member of the Elementary Commission and accreditor of the Philippines Accrediting Association of Schools, Colleges, and Universities, and a former SEAC NCR Reading Area Chair. A prolific writer, she is an academic consultant in several schools and has written books, workbooks, and articles in different subject area levels. She has also published and presented researches in education, locally and internationally. She is the former Vice Chair and member of the Board of Directors of the Philippine Association for Teacher Education, National Capital Region, and the former Executive Secretary and currently the Executive Director of the Philippine Association of Teachers and Educators. Our resource speaker is not only a member and officer of several professional organizations, but also a resource speaker, facilitator, and trainer in different subject areas in the fields of discipline. A recipient of the Special Citation as one of the outstanding professionals in the field of teaching, awarded by the Professional Regulations Commission, an educator par excellence. With pride and honor, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Milagros Lim Burao.
Thank you very much, Dr. Del Rosario, for that very kind and generous introduction. Dr. Predity Bernal, Director, CEDRO, Region 5. Dr. Rosemary Arao, Educational Supervisor. Dr. Nelly De Terra, President, and to all the officers of CODTE, and our dear pre-service teachers. A grace-filled morning, everyone. Indeed, the pandemic has made us more creative in designing our programs to ensure the quality of education. This is a great manifestation of our quest for excellence and relevance. As I talked about my topic today about upskilling the competencies of teachers in the new normal, my outcomes will be on the following. So the first outcome is I'm going to define terms relevant to the topic, give the importance of upskilling the competencies of pre-service teachers, and cite the benefits of upskilling of teachers. Likewise, I'm also going to state the qualities of excellent teachers and enumerate the ways on how to make learning more relevant to our students. Now, but what is this upskilling all about? What is the term all about? By the way, can you see my screen? It's the process of acquiring new and relevant competencies needed today in the near future. And some of the examples are already given by Dr. Alan. The need to be more on improving your digital skills, your analytical skills, and organization and transformation skills. Now, we also have that upskilling will facilitate continuous learning. As teachers, we need to improve every now and then. Once a teacher, always a learner. And what do? We provide more development opportunities that expand teachers' abilities and minimize skill gaps. So even though you are already in the in-service or what we call inset, you are going to continue learning more about your role as a teacher. Then what are those that we need to upskill? These are the current skill set, usually through training, so teachers can advance in their jobs and find different roles and opportunities within the school. The next term that we are going to unlock will be teaching excellence. Although this has been already explained by Teacher Alan, let me just reaffirm. So it's an academic process by which students are motivated to learn in ways that make things more substantial, and it gives more positive influences to act and feel. A process that elevates students to a level to learn deeply and remarkably because of these attributes. Sabi nga ni Teacher Alan kanina, ang teacher na may dating. In CEU, we say, ang teacher na may karunungan. So, siyensya y virtud, teacher na may karunungan at may kabaitan. So, what is relevance in teaching? So, there are two types of relevance. There are the personal relevance or life relevance. It refers to experiences that are either directly applicable to the personal aspirations, interests, and cultural experiences of students. And this is what we call personal relevance. May dating o merong sinasabi tungkol sa kanyang sarili, sa kanyang pagkatao. And if this one will be connected to the real world issues, problems, and context, this is what we call life relevance. Kaya mas mabuti pag tayo ay nagtuturo, kailangan hindi lang yung pangsarili. Dapat din ito'y nakikita in the broader aspects of the curriculum. Now, what is new normal? Because of this COVID-19, we have a current situation, a social custom that is different from what has been experienced or expected. So, naiba ang ating mundo. Nagkaroon tayo ng mga transition, hindi lamang sa edukasyon, kundi sa larangan ng iba't ibang pamumuhay. Now, why is it that we need to have upskilling, to have new competencies? Job roles and requirements are changing faster than ever. Naiba na ang demand o pangangailangan ng ating bansa o ng edukasyon. What else? Teachers expect more opportunities for growth within their schools and institution. Dahil nga dito sa nangyaring pandemic, marami ng mga oportunidad, maraming mga pangyayari na kailangan nating baguhin. What else? It helps an institution to stay more competitive by closing skill gaps. Itong pandemic na ito ay nagbigay din ng mga rason o pamamaraan upang tayo ay lalong maging creative at resilient para yung ating mga gaps na nakikita ay ating mapunan. What else? It decreases the need to recruit outside the school to fill in the gaps. Pag tayo ay nag-reskill ng tao, we don't need to hire more teachers, but we need to fill in the gaps so that when we train them for new competencies, they will be able to learn more. And there is no need to hire outsiders or recruit outsiders. But there are times that we also need to recruit simply because there is a need to outsource. Some competencies are needed, so we need to outsource employees or teachers who can also help our teachers in the process. Then it increases teacher satisfaction. They boost the motivation and performance and morale. once you are given new competencies, what do you do? Mas lalo kang nagiging kampante, nagiging mas maalam sa paggawa ng iyong mga gawain o gampanin, at lalong ang moral mo ay tumataas kasi dumami ang iyong kaalaman at karunungan. There is no need to hire, no? So there will be a need to retain the faculty. But at this point in time, when we have this pandemic, there were teachers who were really laid off simply because some of the enrollment also decreased, no? But however, they're able also to be hired somewhere else because they also have these skills. Now, what are the benefits? Why we have the upskilling? It helps current employees to learn new job skills. Natututo pa ng mga ibang mga kasanayan. What else? It makes the school more attractive to more applicants and improves employees' experience. Yung iyong karanasan ay nadadagdagan dahil dito sa pandemyang ito, natututo tayo maging resilient at creative, kaya ang iyong karanasan ay lalong dumarami at nararagdagan. Then, it can also generate an ROI or return of investment later on, not only in terms of knowledge, but in terms of skills. Then, training opportunities is often cheaper than addressing workplace problems. Pag na-address mo, if you're able to address the gaps existing in your school, then it will be less costly or less burdensome for our administrators. What else? Just like what I said, not only the faculty, but also employee retention rate. Then, the cost turnover, no, it lowers financial cost because you're able to train your teachers. When you have this upskilling process for your teachers, learning new competencies, then there will be lesser cost in terms of getting more employees for your school. Then it gives employee engagement. They are more engaged in the process, they teach more, they do more, and they learn more. One of the benefits of upskilling is also employee productivity. You're able to do more. Mas lalo kang ginaganahang gumawa ng mas marami at mas produktibo sapagkat mas marami kang kaalamang ginagawa. Then, definitely when we say customer satisfaction, this will be your students, your parents, and other stakeholders in your community who will be more than satisfied with what you're doing in education simply because you are able to have more competencies in your work. And then it maintains your competitive market standing. Gumaganda ang iyong standing sa lahat ng mga eskwelahan. Kasi bakit? Sapagkat ang mga teachers nyo ay maraming mga competencies na natututuhan dahil dun sa ginagawa nyong upskilling program. Now, let me align the qualities of an excellent teacher with the PPST or the Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers. So these are the qualities of an excellent teacher. We'll have one. The first one is what we call subject matter expertise or knowing your content. So this one is under domain 1, content and pedagogy in the PPST. And what are these? Your content knowledge and application within and across curriculum areas. If you are an excellent teacher, you're able to relate your subject matter content not to only one area within your level, but across subject areas. The next one is research-based knowledge and principles of teaching and learning. Bilang guro, kailangan ikaw rin ay mahusay mananaliksik, no? Sa pananaliksik sapagkat lahat ng resulta ng pananaliksik ay pwedeng magamit sa kabutihan at kagandahan ng iyong pagtuturo. What are the other in terms of instructional expertise, the way you deliver your lesson In terms of pedagogy, this is domain 1 or content and pedagogy, and under domain 4, curriculum and learning. So you have the positive use of ICT. Katulad na nabanggit ni Dr. Alan kanina, kailangan maalam na tayo sa TPAC. What else? Strategies in promoting literacy and numeracy. By the way, the one I'm discussing are the domains found in the PPST, the 37 indicators. Then strategies in developing the HATS, the higher order thinking skills. Under instructional expertise, we also have the planning and management and the teaching learning process. This one is the preparation of your daily learning plans or daily lesson logs. Now, we always have to make sure that our learning outcomes are aligned with our learning competencies. So we always say objectively aligned, or the objectives that you're going to draft will be aligned with your activities and your assessment. What else? The relevance and the responsiveness of all the learning programs that you're going to do in school. So here, it will be more on personal and life relevance. Yung mga ginagawang programa sa inyong aralin at sa inyong paaralan ay kailangan nakatuon o may kinalaman sa kanilang pang-araw-araw na pamumuhay. What else under instructional expertise? Your professional collaboration among teachers, among your peers, among different professional organizations will enrich your teaching practice. Just like CODTE. CODTE is an organization of the deans. So all the deans are together. What does it mean? So they can share best practices among their schools. What else? You also have other professional organizations like PAFTE, where I belong, Philippine Association for Teachers and Educators, among the 17 regions. You also have what you call the Reading Association of the Philippines, the PALP. So these are professional collaboration that will help you improve your teaching practice. Now, another one on the indicator is teaching and learning resources, including ICT. The pandemic has changed also our teaching learning process. So just like what Teacher Alan mentioned, we have different learning spaces and stations that we can already adapt and we can already use. Now, the next expertise is what we call communication expertise. The way you express your ideas, your thoughts, and that will also be under domain 1, content and pedagogy. The use of mother tongue, the Filipino and English in teaching and learning. So right now, there is a new trend that we have to use mother tongue in the lower grades so that they can understand their content better. We also have classroom communication strategies, whether it's verbal or non-verbal. We have to use this so that we can enrich our instruction. Under classroom management, the fourth one is under classroom management expertise. So the first one was subject matter expertise. The next one is instructional expertise. Communication, our fourth expertise will be classroom management expertise. And this is directly aligned with domain 2, learning environments, and domain 3, diversity of learners. So what are they? We always have to ensure that the learning environment is safe and secured, non-threatening and friendly for our students. The next one is a fair learning environment, when the teacher will always be objective in their in grading their students, fair in terms of grading, fair in terms of treatment. And then the management of structuring your activities. You have your classroom routines, your organization in the delivery of content and everything. So you also have support of learning participation. This is what we call also student engagement. How we engage our students in class. It's entirely different now since we are virtually conducting our classes, but there are several ways by which you can do in order to ensure that student engagement is also done in the virtual classes that you're going to have. Now, we also have to promote purposive learning. So that's the reason why we also always place our outcomes at the beginning and try to ensure at the end whether the outcomes that we have stated at the beginning of the lesson were attained at the end. Then the management of learner behavior, it's quite different now because we cannot see our students face to face. But there are several ways by which you can also manage our learning behavior by setting the routines and by setting standards during our online or remote classes. In classroom management expertise, there is also a need for our teachers to know the learners' gender needs. So we have what we call gender sensitivity and gender equality, the needs and strengths and interests and experiences of our learners. That's one way by which we will be able to address the different issues of our learners in terms of designing classroom activities. What else? We also have to take into account the linguistic, the cultural, and socioeconomic and religious background of our students. This is one also of the indicators placed in the PPST. Now, why am I trying to explain all this? Because these are the parameters or indicators whereby you're going to be evaluated by your teachers in promotion, no? So the first step is the beginning teacher, then you have your proficient teachers, then you have highly proficient, and then the distinguished teachers. These are all part of the PPST domain. Then we also have, how are we going to treat our learners with disabilities, giftedness, and talents? Now, you might ask me, Ma'am, medyo mahirap yan kasi nasa online. But if you know exactly your students by heart, whether virtually or face-to-face, you know all those students by getting the record from your guidance office or asking a document, what are the things that they need. Others are virtually handicapped, so or hearing impaired, so you have to do this so that you'll be able to address their needs even in remote learning. Learners in difficult or challenged areas, difficult circumstances. We also have to note the geographical location of our students, whether there's a reason why even DepEd made some modalities like the modular approach if they cannot have their Wi-Fi connectivity, so that we'll be able also to ensure that learning takes place continually even during the remote learning. Then from the indigenous groups, no? So these are also things that we have to consider in order to be excellent teachers. How are we going to address the needs of the indigenous groups? For the next expertise, we have the relational expertise, how you interact with your with the other stakeholders, how you relate with people. And what are these? These will be under domain 6 or community linkages, and then domain 7 or professional engagement, professional growth and development. Professional collaboration to enrich teaching practice. I think I mentioned this a while ago. And the establishment of learning environments that are responsive to the community context. So what do we mean? We're able to relate with the different stakeholders by trying to be responsive to the needs of our students. One good way is if we're not able to have our Wi-Fi connectivity during our remote learning, what do? We can establish group chat with our students through our FB Messenger. We can also try to communicate with them through FB, or it can also be through their personal emails. Engagement of parents in the educational process, just like what we have seen in infographics presented by Dr. Alan, parents are now playing a vital role. So they are there at the beginning, at the middle, and at the end of our classes. So part of the educational process, although we don't see them that they are there, but actually there are some parents who are really keen on observing how their children are doing or interacting with the teachers. Then we got also to maintain our professional ethics as teachers. So RA 7836, we got to be guided by that in order that we also have to upgrade or to promote the standards of teaching. And definitely, all schools have their policies and procedures. So we have to follow all the policies and procedures of the school. Even during this time of pandemic, they have issued different orders and policies, especially in the conduct of remote learning. All of us we have our own philosophy of teaching that we adhere to. So I do hope that at the beginning, at this point in time that you are in the first year and second year, you also are now evolving your own philosophy of teaching. Then we always say that teaching, the dignity of the teaching is a profession, a mission, and a vocation. So we always have to upgrade and we always have to promote that teaching is a dignified profession. Then we also have to promote or establish professional links or linkages with our colleagues, part of our personal and professional development. What else? This one is done especially in FS2, professional reflection and learning to improve practice. That's the reason why that in FS1 and FS2, there is always a part for personal reflection after doing your observation and participation in order that you will be able to address or to improve your teaching practice as well. Part of professional reflection is also trying to think about possible action research topics, which eventually will have to improve your teaching and learning process. And then definitely we have our personal and professional development goals. I think some of you were asked to make your individual professional development plan as soon as you entered your first year. Why? Because you're now going to more or less try to track whether you are now trying to improve on your IPPD. The last one among the expertise is diagnostic. So if I'm going to review, we have subject matter expertise, instructional expertise, classroom management expertise, communication expertise, relational expertise. And the last one, in order to become an excellent teacher, is what we call the diagnostic expertise, which is part of your domain 5 or assessment and reporting. What are they? You're able to design, select, and organize and utilize various assessment strategies, whether traditional or non-traditional. Then, we're very good in planning, but sometimes Filipino teachers find it more difficult in monitoring and evaluating learner progress and achievement. I think we really have to do this to monitor and evaluate our student performance from time to time. Then, we have to give feedback to improve learning, whether positive or negative feedback, but we got to be always aware that when we make feedback, it got to be always on the constructive side. Then communication of learning needs, learners needs progress and achievement to different stakeholders. We always communicate to the different stakeholders the progress and the needs and the achievement of our students. One example are the report cards, or you also make letters to parents, or right now what is in is giving of digital portfolio. so that the students will know, the parents will know exactly what are being done in school. This one is very true in early childhood when digital portfolio is part of the report card of students. The way to communicate effectively how far they have gone in their studies. What else? The use of assessment data to enhance teaching and learning practices and programs. There are so many assessment data collected and consolidated by teachers. So this must be one way to improve the learning practice and programs of the schools. So in all schools for that matter, even evaluation tools and assessment tools are given at the end of a seminar, at the end of a teaching process. Why? In order that we can improve teaching practice. Now, I'm done with excellent how to para maging marunong o mahusay ang teacher. That will be excellence o sinasabi nating may galing. Sabi ni Dr. Alan, may galing at may dating. Now, how to make learning relevant to students? I'm going to give you some tips. Paano magiging mas makabuluhan ang pag-aaral ng mga bata? Attaching a new piece of information of learning to an existing or previous ones. Bilang guro, malimit nagkakaroon tayo ng balik-aral o review. Bakit nagkakaroon ng balik-aral o review? Natutunan natin sa education, the review of the lesson will give an introduction of the past to the new lesson, ikinakabit natin so that they will be able to make a connection or a very good transition of the past learning to the new learning. Effective teaching of the students recognize patterns and put the information in context within the old to new memories, okay? So that there will be a long-term storage process. What else? Establishing learners' emotional reaction to the outcomes of student efforts. What does it mean? Pag ang bata hindi naniniwala na yung activity na yan ay may kinalaman at may kabulahan sa kanya, hindi niya yan masyadong iisipin o hindi niya masyadong iintindihan. Kasi sabi niya, wala naman pala itong kinalaman sa akin. Bakit kailangan ko pang gagawin? Bakit kailangan ko pang pag-aaralan? So we have to tell exactly the students how this learning will more or less be interesting or relevant to him by giving exactly the purpose why that lesson is being given. Number 3, discussing how theory can be applied in practice. Lalo na yung sa mga experiments sa science. Bakit itong teorya na ito ay kailangan nating malaman? Bakit? Kasi ito ay may kinalaman upang lalong maging makabuluhan ang pag-aaral. Giving examples on the theories that can be applied in everyday life will make the learning more meaningful and more relevant. What else? Making a link to local cases. Kung ito ay nangyayari, kaya nga madalas sabihin natin, magbigay ng maraming mga halimbawa para makita na ito ay may kinalaman hindi lang dito sa atin, kundi sa iba pang lugar. So, here connecting one's learnings from general perspective, from a general rule going to, kaya sinasabi ko palagi sa aking mga estudyante, parang imbudo yan, parang funnel, from general to specific. It will be more understandable to the students if they can see that this one is from a bigger perspective to a simpler perspective. What else are we going to do? Relating subject matter to everyday application. Nakikita sa tunay na buhay. Kaya malimit, if we're going to have our classroom observation sheet, can the students relate the subject matter to everyday life in the daily situations? How can they apply this in their daily situations. Example, bakit tayo naglalagay ng bimpo sa noo ng bata kapag ito ay nilalagnat? So ano bang rule yan ng science? Bakit ba yung railroad track hindi dikit-dikit? Sinasabi natin na when the molecules, when they are heated, they expand and contracts when cooled. Bakit nga ganon? Bakit nga kailangan natin explain yung mga iba't ibang bagay para mapakita na ang teorya ay may kinalaman sa pang-araw na buhay. For number 6, discussing and finding application in current newsworthy issues and events. So nakikita sa mga daily news and foreign news. The learnings in class can be relevant if they see this happening in the news and situations locally and internationally. Katulad ngayon, ang tungkol sa COVID, tungkol sa bakuna, napakaraming mga sinasabi, may maraming mga adverse effects. Ang iba'y natatakot. So ano kailangan natin gawin? Ipaliwanag sa klase kung ano yung mga benefits ng pagbabakuna. Kasi ito ay isang newsworthy issue. Kasi lahat tayo may kinalaman dyan upang magkaroon tayo ng herd immunity. Okay? Then, what else? Making activities students directed. Although ngayon, medyo mahirap, it's quite difficult because of remote learning, but there are some teachers who are able to be more creative in making their learning more memorable by designing particular tasks. Ang tawag nga dito ng apo ko, mga performance tasks. And they were able to do it. And these are student-directed. Even storytelling can be done. Paggawa ng reflection, ginagawa din nila. So these are all student-directed that will also improve your higher order thinking skills. Then, the utility value, kanino ko pa binabanggit yan? Why is there a need for us? Why is it relevant? Because it is important, the content is important, and the content is interesting because this is usable, very practical in everyday life. Then, it builds relatedness. May pagkakaugnayan. Lahat ng aking ginagawa sa school ay may kaugnayan sa aking buhay, may kaugnayan sa pandaigdigang issue. Kasi nakikita nila yung relasyon ng bawat pinag-aaralan na kaya relevant. What is the relevance of this to me? No? Ano ba? Ito ba'y magagamit ko? Relatedness is seen by many as having academic and academic sides. So they can see why is there a need to really know and to study the lessons. And for the last, providing a minimal context. Context will mean local or situation within which the students can develop in becoming more engaged, motivated, and self-regulated learners. The final note here is, once they know that the lesson is relevant, they become more motivated, they learn more, they do more, and they participate more. So this one will eventually help them to achieve their career goals. Lahat ng goals ko sa buhay, makukuha ko. Hindi lang buhay muna. Goal dun sa lesson, goal sa kurso, and goal sa panghabang buhay na kalagayan ng bawat isa. Now, to recap my discussion, let me share with you a video which is Excellence is a Drive, Inside Nor Outside, a short story.
One day, a man saw a sculptor making two identical idols and asked, "Why do we need two idols?"
Can you hear?
There is a
see the video?
problem in the first one. The sculptor said, to the idols from all sides. What is the mistake? I can't see it, he said. There is a scratch on the nose, the sculptor said. The man was surprised. Where will this idol be placed? He asked. There, the sculptor pointed towards a high ledge. Oh, that's so high. Nobody will know there is a scratch. Why are you wasting your time on another idol? The man asked. The sculptor said, I agree, but I know and God knows. And that's all that matters.
Okay, I do hope that the video is clear. So there is a sculptor and there is somebody was asking, why do we have to place it 20 feet high? There is a scratch on the nose. No one can see it. Ano ngayon ang implikasyon niyan sa teacher? Whether may nakakakit, somebody appreciates you or not, if you excel as a teacher, you're going to do your job well simply because you are there, no? So ang mangyayari niya, may nakakakita man sa iyo, may nakaka-appreciate sa iyo, kailangan na ang excellence ay palaging naroon. So ikaw man ay hinahangaan o hindi, basta ikaw ay nag-excel at mahusay kang guro, kailangan ipakita palagi yon, may nanonood man, may nag-observe man o hindi. So it is in this note that I am leaving this video for you to reflect on. So dadagdagan ko yung sinabi ni Sir Alan, may dating at galing, pero kay Dr. B naman may karunungan at kabaitan. So lahat ng teachers kailangan mahusay, marunong, pero may character. Sabi nga natin, there is character and competence. May karunungan na at may kabaitan pa. Sa time ng pandemic, at this time of pandemic, we got to excel and we got to be relevant so that we will not become obsolete teachers. And with this, I would like to thank CODTE V for inviting me to share with you my thoughts about excellence and relevance, and I do hope that you will be able to do your share as teachers in the field. So happy students, learn more, do more, and work more. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Bravo, for the very enriching lecture, and thank you too for being at our beck and call. We sincerely appreciate your support to CODTE V. Please receive the certificate of commendation that will be presented by the CODTE President, Dr. Ditera, and our Vice President, Dr. Arlene D. Monsalve. May I read the citation? Council of Deans for Teacher Education Region 5, People Incorporated, presents the certificate of commendation to Dr. Milagros Lim Borabo, Vice President for Luzon, FAFTE National, for generously sharing her invaluable knowledge, precious time, wealth of experience, and unparalleled expertise as resource speaker during the 14th service in teacher education under the new normal, held on April 23, 2021 via Zoom and Facebook Live. Given this 23rd day of April 2021 at Ninong's Hotel, Legazpi City, Philippines, signed Nelly A. Ditera, EDD, CODTE President.
Thank you very much, CODTE V. It's always a joy working with you. Marami pong salamat.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, we are almost at the finish line, dear participants. And that certificates of participation will be sent to you after you have accomplished the evaluation tool sent to your email. Listen to the closing remarks of Dr. Anthony Irigasiti, Vice President, CODTE V.
Be a yardstick of quality. Some people aren't used to an environment where excellence is expected. By Steve Jobs. To all the participants of this Pre-Service Teacher Education Congress, colleagues in the organization, dear students, friends, a pleasant day to all. As educators geared with the new normal brought by the present day health crisis, shifting to a new educational paradigm is of paramount importance as well. Now is the time for schools to ensure that teachers do not just translate what they do inside the physical classroom into an online medium, but rather think and create a more relevant, more meaningful, and excellent learning experiences for the students. Teacher-driven discussions and lengthy lectures are no longer effective in our current setup, since in the online learning, students always have divided focus between attending to their online classes and the use of their mobile gadget for other entertainment purposes, thereby posing the need for flexible learning. Flexible learning is a pedagogical approach allowing flexibility of time, place, and audience, including but not solely focus on the use of technology framed by the three key themes: innovation and challenges, relevance and excellence in the field of teacher training and education. We believe that the transfer of our experiences and findings is most relevant to educators seeking to create learning experiences that increase students' engagement with complexity and uncertainty. With the sharing of our expert speakers, we are now more confident that we will be able to embrace the new normal with our technology-based instruction and face whatever challenges and issues comes our way. With this, we express our utmost gratitude to our highly esteemed speakers who are with us for today, and also to our competent and event organizer whose untiring commitment ensured the success of this activity. Once again, thank you and have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Montalve. The pandemic has had a significant impact on the education sector, and it has transformed the education system drastically, thereby calling for a paradigm shift in teaching and learning methodologies. It has forced educational institutions to reimagine traditional face-to-face in-person modality while embracing totally appropriate modalities that are within the capacities of the learner, if not an online mode of teaching to provide uninterrupted access to education and knowledge. This year's Teacher Education Congress has provided us with exactly that. We need to be relevant with the times. We need to upskill our future teachers if we want to be excellent progenitors of knowledge. Thank you, Dr. De Guzman, and thank you, Dr. Burabo, for sharing your expertise to our pre-service teachers. Let us all keep the passion for teaching burning. Thank you, everyone, for your precious time. At this point, may I request all participants to please turn on your video or camera for documentation. We will be taking screenshots for documentation. Everyone, please turn on your video. Yes, beautiful people, future mentors of the country.
It's 15 slides. Sabihin mo siya pag okay naman.
Okay na po. Next na po yan. Isa pa. 25 slides.
Please stay on. Slide 6 o 15 pa lang po. Please stay. May we also inform you that the evaluation, the link to the evaluation tool is already posted in the chat box if you want to accomplish that now, so that you can get your certificate of participation. Okay, thank you so much. This has been your host for the day, Dr. Jeanette Llamas Bakasan of UST Legazpi, saying thank you for your active participation, for your virtual presence, and for your staying power. See you in person, hopefully, in the 15th Regional Pre-Service Teacher Education Congress. Stay safe, everyone. God bless. Right.